Chapter 217. Tut tut tut. Xiao Yu, look, some of these bandits were forced to become bandits and some of them just want to reap without sowing and rely on robbing other people's labor resources. They work hard to farm for a year, but it's not as much as the profit of one job for these bandits. The hall was filled to the brim with boxes. Jiang Pingji crossed her legs and leaned against the main seat as if she had no bones. She pointed at the opened boxes below with her fair fingers, and her eyes swept over the bandits who were tied up with their hands tied behind their backs in a mocking manner. Suka looked at the things in the boxes. The blue veins on his forehead bulged and he felt a little uneasy. He was not worried about what would happen to these bandits. He was just worried that his Langjun would get addicted to beating bandits and get carried away. Although, he also felt good about it. Meng Hun sat on the chair of the second master of the bandit village. In contrast, Suka looked much more gentle. Meng Hun asked in a fierce voice, "Langjun, what should we do with these people? Are they all like this or just like this?" Meng Hun made two very obvious gestures. When the bandits saw this, they all shivered, their legs trembled and tears and mucus flowed down their cheeks. "My lords, please spare my life. I was forced into this den of thieves. I've never done anything evil in the past. Please spare my life. I have children and old people to take care of. I'm responsible for the family's livelihood. If I die, how can my 60-year-old mother and my 3-year-old son survive? Please. I was also forced into this place by that black-hearted man. Please spare my life." In order to survive, one by one they began to act pitiful. Some desperately kowtowed and begged for mercy, some wanted to sell the secret of the bandit's stronghold in order to get a chance to live, and some people spoke with tears in their eyes, trying to move people with their emotions. Those tragic stories made people feel sad. However, no matter what they said or how they acted, Suka just looked at them coldly. Meng Hun looked like it was none of his business. The real mastermind, Jiang Pingji, looked at each and every one of them with a faint smile, as if she was watching a monkey show. "Don't be in a hurry to deal with these people." Jiang Pingji put her fingers together and pretended to be thinking. Then she turned her head and asked Suku, "Are all the things found in this village here? How much grain and money are there in total?" Suku lowered his head and looked at the bamboo slip that he had made some simple records on. He said, "There are about 300 dawn of grain and about 700 taels of money and silk." This was only a rough estimate. After all, they were in a hurry, so they would have to wait until they got back. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, 300 dawn of grain, 700 taels of silver. That's more than your Longjuan's monthly allowance for a few years." Suka secretly rolled his eyes. In terms of money, Jiang Pingji's monthly allowance in the Luz was indeed not much. It was only a few taels a month. But after taking into account the snacks, brushes, ink, paper, inkstones, clothes and fabrics, and especially the expensive bamboo paper outside, how could she be considered poor? "Pack up and bring all these things back." Jiang Pingji smiled faintly and waved her hand. She looked more like a bandit than the head of a bandit. "Brothers, you've worked hard today. When we get back, each of you will get 1 tael of silver and 1 jean of pork. You should make up for your hard training. As for where the expenses would come from, of course, it would be the confiscated bandits' supplies. How many people were there in the troop? It was just a small reward which was not painful at all. Instead, it could win people's hearts and stimulate their fighting spirit. How could it not be worth it? In addition, each corporal get 1 more share. Of course, the treatment of ordinary troops and corporal had to be different so that they could clearly realize that if they wanted to get better treatment, they had to train hard and climb up. Write it down. Suku nodded while writing. Jiang Pingji naturally did not forget Suku and Meng Hun. Each of them got 10 taels of silver. In addition, Meng Hun got a few more jars of wine and 5 jean of pork, while Suku got a few bolts of good quality cotton cloth and some health herbs of equal value. The arrangement was made purely because Meng Hun was single. He had to feed himself and Suku had to take care of his aunt. In front of a group of bandits, Jiang Pingji's attitude was particularly natural. It was as if she was not distributing the money in someone else's pocket, but her own. Well, it did belong to her now. She waved her hand and Suku understood. He asked his men to move the big boxes to the open space. Next, it was time to deal with the bandits. Bandits. Kill me if you want. The leader of the bandits who was captured had a gloomy face. Everyone. The audience in the streaming room watched happily as Jiang Pingji distributed the loot. Then they were shocked by the words of the leader of the bandits. Lanlian Junzi. Awesome. That's awesome. Lao Siji Lianming. Ha, host, did you hear that? Even the leader of the bandits called you a bandit. What does that mean? Miu Qingfeng. Indifferent face. It means that the host is the leader of the bandits. The bandits worked hard to save their belongings by robbing merchants, but the host took them all at once. Wasn't he the bandit of the bandits? Kill me if you want. Jiang Pingji clapped her hands and smiled. You have guts. Then go to hell. Everyone was silent. They thought that Jiang Pingji would appreciate the man's courage, but they didn't expect that she would say such a thing. In fact, you won't survive even if you don't say it. Jiang Pingji sneered and broke the bandit's neck. The blood from the bandit's mouth and tongue stained the back of her hand. Nongqin quickly handed her a handkerchief. She took it with her left hand and threw the bandit's body aside with her right hand. She wiped the blood on her hand with the handkerchief without frowning. Now who wants to tell me that I can kill you if I want? Who dares to say that? The strong and cold aura was suffocating. The bandits had an illusion that they would be the next one. Capable people are tough and unyielding. That's worth appreciating. But a scum dares to challenge me. Who else but him will die? Jiang Pingji curled her lips and wiped the blood on the back of her hand. She put away the handkerchief instead of throwing it on the ground. She glanced at the crowd, but no one dared to look at her. People cherished their lives, even those bandits who risked their lives. Meng Hun followed behind Jiang Pingji with a knife in his hand. If she frowned at someone, Meng Hun would cut off that person's head. Without the slightest sign and without the slightest bit of preparation, the group of bandits were scared out of their wits. Their crotches heated up and many of them were scared to the point of urinating. The scene was silent. Only the increasingly bloody smell and the occasional sound of blood splashing could be heard. Heads flew and fell to the ground. The audience in the live streaming room was so scared that they even forgot to send messages. Chapter 218. Do you know why I killed them? Jiang Pingji walked around and finally returned to her seat. She put her fingers together and put on an inscrutable look. Because they deserved to die. If I don't kill them now, do I have to keep them alive until the new year? Pigs could be slaughtered and eaten during the new year. What value could these people create by keeping them alive? Jiang Pingji said, there are 3 things I hate the most in my life. The first is betrayal, the second is rape, and the third is deceit. No matter who it is, I don't need to care about their feelings when they meet these 3 bottom lines. Not to mention killing them. Even if I cut off all of their heads, who could say anything about it? Bandits should be prepared to lose their heads. However, there's a way out for you now. The bandits who were killed could not have betrayed Jiang Pingji or deceived her. The only reason was that they had a history of rape. Many bandits came to their senses and their faces turned pale. They thought about it carefully and it seemed to be true. Those who were still alive today, although they weren't good people, at least they weren't involved in this. It wasn't that they didn't want to, it was purely because those women were snatched away and given to the bandits who had a reputation first. They were just small minions running errands. Those delicate and tender young ladies would not live long enough for them to have a taste of them. They would have long been toyed to death. I know there are no good people among you, Jiang Pingji said again. She instantly extinguished the wishful thinking that the bandits had just had. If we take them in, who knows if we will raise a tiger in our bosom. After all, you can cause some trouble if you gather together. What Jiang Pingji said was actually what Suku was worried about. The size of their troops was too small. If they took in all the bandits, the consequences would be unimaginable if the bandits gathered together and caused trouble. It is impossible to know what is in a man's heart. You bandits cannot be trusted at all. So, I am very troubled now. Should I let you all live or should I kill all of you to prevent future troubles? Jiang Pingji smiled and showed her white teeth. The bandits were so scared that they did not dare to make a sound. Suka thought about it and stepped out. Langjun, if we kill all of them, I am afraid it will harm the heavens. I have a plan. Jiang Pingji said, tell me about it. Suka deliberately raised his voice. Why don't we keep them for a month? If they perform well, we'll give them a chance to turn over a new leaf. If they don't, we'll sell them to the broker house. Now that the people are in dire straits, it is not advisable to kill too much. If they were sold to a human trafficker, they would at least be able to get a few taels of silver. could be considered as squeezing the last bit of value out of them. Suke knew his Longjuan's temperament very well. If he could avoid being taken advantage of, he would not allow himself to be taken advantage of. Although these bandits were enslaved, they were still alive. If they were lucky, their lives would be stable in the future. No matter what, being alive was everything. The bandits were frightened again and again. At this time, they no longer had the slightest intention to resist, or rather, even if they did not dare to show it. Jiang Pingji and her people killed without hesitation. They were more like a gang of bandits than them. They were bandits, but Jiang Pingji and her gang were robbers. Jiang Pingji nodded as she listened. Soon after, she pretended to be distressed and asked, "But what if they secretly gather to cause trouble?" Suku answered coldly, "Kill them without mercy." The words "kill without mercy" caused many bandits to tremble uncontrollably, and their entire bodies trembled. Jiang Pingji smiled and immediately asked the bandits in a gentle way, "Did you hear that? If you are willing to live, I will let you live for a month. If your performance is satisfactory, you can live. If not, you will be directly sold to the slave house. If you dare to gather people to cause trouble and secretly violate my taboo, look at your brothers lying next to you." After that, Jiang Pingji patted the armrest of the main seat with her palm, and the wooden armrest immediately collapsed. In a few words, she extinguished the little bit of luck and unwillingness in the hearts of these bandits. The shadow of death would always linger around them. At this time, a troop secretly whispered to Nongqin. After hearing it, a trace of suppressed anger appeared on her face. Jiang Pingji noticed it and asked her, "What's wrong, Nongqin?" "Langjun, there is a cellar in this bandit stronghold which is full of kidnapped children and women." "Cellar?" Jiang Pingji looked at those bandits who were still alive and said coldly, "What's going on here?" Several bandits blushed and wanted to say something, but because of the previous shock and nervousness, they couldn't say a word. A clever one quickly kowtowed and said, "The women and children in the cellar have nothing to do with us. How could there be any law when they were bandits who robbed houses? They robbed everything they could, including money and people." A group of bandits, all male, naturally had physiological needs. When they saw a beautiful woman, they naturally had sexual desires. Jiang Pingji sneered and said, "Go and have a look. Watch these people closely. If anyone dares to struggle, kill him directly." Her words made those who wanted to beg for mercy stiffen, and they dared not make any noise. The air in the cellar was very turbid and there was a lot of excrement in the corner. Smelling it made people feel like stomach acid was surging. There were 2 haggard women and 3 timid 7 or 8-year-old girls hiding in the cellar. Chapter 219. Can a man give birth to a child? Last month, 1,275 plus monthly votes. Jiang Pingji didn't know how to raise useless people. She didn't have that kind of compassion. She had to ensure that the people under her could create value. Otherwise, they were useless. What was the point of keeping them? Therefore, even if she wanted to take them back, she wanted them to create value and contribute to the labor force. Suku calculated in his mind and said, "I'll listen to you." "You don't have enough food and money?" Jiang Pingji asked. She didn't want to rely too much on the lose. Except for the initial capital, she had to find ways to get the rest of the expenses. For example, the money she won from the Fulai gambling house. She left some for Nongqin and gave the rest to Suku to raise the troops. If he told her that he was short of money, she would probably go to the gambling house to have fun. Suku shook his head. "We still have enough. But your goal is not limited to this. We should always plan well so that we don't have enough money when the time comes." How many people were there in the troops? Even if they counted the bandits who hadn't been trained yet, there were only about 100 of them. The expenses were not high. Jiang Pingji gave them plenty of money, not to mention the loot they got from the robbery that night. It was enough to support the troops for a few years. However, his Longjuan's ambition was not limited to that. It was impossible to satisfy a troop of only 100 people. That was a pain in the ass. As a bookkeeper, Suku naturally had to make arrangements in all aspects. He tried his best to divide 1 coin into 2 coins. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms and looked at Suku from head to toe. She said, "Not bad. You look like a bookkeeper." Suku didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Langjun, please don't make fun of me." To be honest, he used to think that a bookkeeper's job was easy until he met his Langjun. Whether a bookkeeper's job was easy or not depended on whether the boss was noisy or not. Jiang Pingji left a few people behind to guard the bandits and took them away in batches. As for the treasures that they had collected, they were transported back. While the sky was still dark, they had to leave as soon as possible to avoid alerting the other bandits. There were too many bandits around Hejian County. If their actions were exposed and alerted, it would not be easy next time. Xiaoyu, go back and see if anyone is injured. Give them more supplements so that they won't be disappointed. On the way back, Jiang Pingji suddenly said, there are rewards and punishments. Good and bad punishments are clear. That way people won't be agitated and we can nip the hidden dangers in the bud. Suka nodded. Don't worry, Langjun. I will definitely get it done. After a busy night, the troops went to sleep in batches. Another group of people were guarding the bandits who were still tied up to prevent them from causing trouble. The farm was large enough and there were many empty rooms. Suku ordered his men to clean up the other 2 large rooms and turn them into bunk beds. He gave each captured bandit a bed. In order to prevent them from rebelling, they were carefully separated and assigned to the previous troops to be regrouped with each other. Because there were more people, the daily expenses also increased. Suku still had a lot of miscellaneous things to do and he only finished it at noon. Suku had seen the Liu family's internal account book recording method and felt that it was very clear, so he simply copied it and used it on the troops. The account book was clear and concise and the accounts were clear and transparent. It was very useful. He calculated the rewards that should be distributed and was silently calculating how many pigs to buy in his heart. His aunt's voice came from outside the house. Aunt, why are you here? Suka put down what he was doing and got up to open the door. Didn't the master reward me with a few bolts of cloth? I think it's not bad. I plan to measure it and make 2 sets of spring clothes for you. Suka's aunt was a very gentle woman, but she worked hard all year round to make a living. Her hands were full of frostbite, and her eyes were much worse under the hardship. It was a bit difficult for her to sew, but Suka didn't stop her. After all, it was the elders' kindness. How could the younger generation refuse? Besides, the farm was too idle. If she didn't find something for herself to do, she would be very bored every day. Suka welcomed her in. Why can you only do it for me? And you have to take care of yourself. Hey aunt, how old are you? Why are you dressed so well? You are working for the master, so you should dress decently. His aunt disagreed. You wear the same few sets of clothes. It shows how much the master mistreats you. Suku coughed awkwardly and said, Aunt Ku brought you here to take care of you when you are old. Don't do the hard work. Make new clothes that need to be made and wear what needs to be worn. There's no need to save. Now that Langjun thinks highly of me, I will have a better life in the future. His aunt glanced at him and said, How can anyone live like you? Aunt, you don't have to save for me. In the future I will buy a few maidservants to serve you. I will treat you like the old madam. You are talking nonsense like you used to. Don't talk about buying maidservants to serve me. If you can bring a maidservant back to continue the Su family's lineage, I will have to worship my ancestors. His aunt put her hands together and Suka didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This matter is not urgent. When I find someone I like, I will definitely tell aunt and let you talk to the matchmaker. Suka's aunt was an open-minded and optimistic woman. She didn't rush Suku when he said so. However, there were still some things that needed to be said to him. A family like ours is not picky. If there is someone suitable and considerate to you, you can marry her. Suku just smiled and didn't give a clear answer. His mind was not on this. He had to finish the things at hand first. At least he had a foundation to establish himself. Besides, his mother's mourning period was not over yet. It was too early to talk about marriage. System. Streamer Jiang Pingji's semi-interactive live broadcast of bandit suppression in the deep mountains, 1, has come to a perfect end. Dear viewers, are you satisfied with this? A. Satisfied. B. Average. C. Not satisfied. It was time to conclude the voting again. This time, satisfaction was within expectations. After all, not everyone in the live broadcast could accept her killing, and she didn't want to change her plan for the audience. She thought that it would be good enough if she could pass the satisfaction level. She didn't expect to get a silver treasure chest. When she heard the system message, she opened it directly and chose to draw a prize. It was another card. She clamped the card with 2 fingers and turned it over. There was a picture of a fat white baby curled up on the card. When she saw the small line of words at the bottom, her face was about to crack. Easy pregnancy pill. The young phoenix's voice is auspicious. Once chosen by the king, she will be doted on. However, no flower will bloom for 100 days. She will only sigh at the changing heart of her husband. If she has a baby by her side, she will definitely stand at the top of the harem and look at the flowers with a smile. Usage. Take it before sex. Jiang Pingji chuckled. System, can you be any more king useless? The system was about to explode. Jiang Pingji. That's enough. I am the harem intrigue system. What else can I give you? Jiang Pingji clicked her tongue and took the card. Is there a system that allows men to have children? System. As a harem intrigue system, you don't even have the ability to have children. How dare you say you are not useless? System. Chapter 220. System. What kind of decent system would do something like that? It was so pissed off by its terrible host. Jiang Pingji only responded with a cold snort. System. How could it be considered decent? A famous item to attract men's interest in their own bodies? An easy pregnancy pill to solidify men's love for them? I was really decent. It was a typical example of a whore trying to maintain her chastity. Jiang Pingji glanced at the 2 cards in her backpack. He seemed to be deep in thought. After a long time she said, speaking of which, it seems that in the past half a month, you haven't sent me a real-time trigger mission. Why? Did you secretly uninstall this section? System clicked its tongue and said, how is that possible? After the section is loaded, you can only uninstall it after the second system upgrade. As for why there hasn't been a single trigger mission. Honestly, host, tell me seriously, how many times have you gone out in the past half a month? Other than going to the farm, she would stay at home and read. It was so boring that it was hard for the livestream viewers to watch. Jiang Pingji pinched her chin and said, what you mean is that if I go out more often I might trigger a mission? System answered in a businesslike manner. In theory, yes. The so-called real-time trigger mission is when the system analyzes the people and things that the host has experienced and determines that there is a need for a mission. Only then will it send a mission to the host. The more people you know and the more things you encounter, the higher the possibility of triggering a mission. But I suggest that you let nature take its course. Jiang Pingji laughed and asked, let nature take its course? Yes, the system just did an analysis and found that you have the intention to go against the system. This is not good for you. The first time the system issued a real-time triggered mission, not only did the host decisively refuse to carry it out, but he even calmly accepted the punishment. After the mission was completed, the system was 99% sure that the host wanted to cause trouble again. Don't be so paranoid. No matter what, we're in a temporary partnership. We're in the same boat. What good will it do me if I deliberately go against you? Jiang Pingji spread her hands to show that she had no ill intentions. The system's answer was silence. Although it hadn't been with Jiang Pingji for long, the system already understood that it could only trust half of what she said. After a long while, the system finally spoke. I am very happy that the host can finally understand the pains of being a system. I will not harm you. I hope that we can get along well in the future. The system and Jiang Pingji seemed to have reached an alliance and restored a harmonious relationship. In fact, they were like 2 businessmen shaking hands with a smile. Each of them held a sharp dagger behind their backs, ready to plot against the other at any time and then find an opportunity to stab the other in the back. Jiang Pingji only returned to the Lu residence when it was close to dinner time. When she returned, she heard from the gatekeeper that Lu Xi was waiting for her in the study. Frowning slightly, she lightly said, I understand. I'll go see my father now. Why was Lu Xi looking for her? Jiang Pingji had a vague guess. It was either related to the bandit suppression the night before or there was news from Meng County in Song Prefecture. Although she did not take the initiative to tell Lu Xi about the bandit extermination, she did not deliberately hide it from him. The farm was kept a secret from outsiders but not from Lu Xi. It was normal for him to know about it. As soon as he arrived at the study, he saw Lu Xi sitting upright with a slight frown on his face. His fingers were flipping through the booklet on the table. He was engrossed in reading. As usual, Jiang Pingji first saluted him. Then she said, Father, what can I do for you? Lu Shi then raised his head and gestured for Jiang Pingji to sit beside him. You. Lu Shi was about to say something but he suddenly stopped. He looked a little hesitant. Are you hurt? Jiang Pingji was sure that was not what Lu Shi wanted to say before. She shook her head and said, No, I'm not hurt. A gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall. But I know you well. It's useless to persuade you. Lu Shi sighed softly. Then he smiled with some pride. Most of those bandits are the kind of people who only know how to steal and steal. They don't know the word loyalty, and they don't know the word loyalty. I won't object to your decision, but you have to be careful in case they plot against you behind your back. Jiang Pingji said, Of course. The troops are short of manpower. If we take in more bandits than the original troops, there will be hidden dangers. But I've found a reason to get rid of those who are easy to cause trouble. Although the remaining bandits are slippery and have dirty hands, they are easy to suppress and intimidate. Even if they gather together, they won't cause any big trouble. Lu Shi heard that and slightly tightened his hand on his left knee. Then he secretly loosened it. Originally, he thought that his daughter would not know the severity of the situation and keep a group of hidden dangers by her side. It would be terrible if she was bitten by them. Therefore, after receiving the news, he hurriedly wanted to see her and give her a reminder. However, he did not expect that this child was even more vicious and merciless than he thought. But there are exceptions to everything. The human heart is more complicated and changeable. Maybe there are times when I'm wrong. Jiang Pingji smiled faintly and said, Xiao, you did a good job. He separated the bandits. If that's the case, the bandits still dare to cause trouble. Speaking of this, Jiang Pingji's lips suddenly curved into a bloodthirsty smile. It's better to kill them directly. They couldn't create value, couldn't contribute to the labor force, and even dragged her down. Why not get rid of them early? Why keep them? I'm relieved that you think so. Lu Shi sighed softly. His hanging heart slowly calmed down. He was not afraid of anything. He was afraid that his child was too soft-hearted, or too proud and conceited. She could do big things well but stumble over small things. Father, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Lu Shi nodded and immediately looked at her with hesitation. If that's the case, are you still going out these days? Lu Shi was hinting at her to ask if she was still going to find trouble with the bandits. Jiang Pingji understood in an instant. No, I'm going to digest and absorb what we've collected. It's more important to have quality than quantity. If the troops are too bloated, the overall strength will decrease instead of increase. It's not worth the loss. She planned to let the bandits undergo mandatory training for 3 to 5 days. Then she would see the results and screen them one by one. The useful ones would be kept, and the less useful ones would be sold to the broker or let them work in the fields. Anyway, she did not keep idle people here. Seeing that Lu Shi was still there, she asked, Father, do you have any other orders? Lu Shi lowered his eyes and asked in a low voice, When did you kill Meng Liang? Lu Shi knew that his daughter would do what she wanted to do, but he didn't expect that she would kill Meng Liang without hesitation. If he hadn't thought of Meng Liang on a whim, he would have thought that he was still alive. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, How long has Coach Meng been here? Meng Liang has been dead for a few days. Chapter 221. One of the only father, you don't know about this? Jiang Pingji thought that with Lu Shi's attention to her, nothing that happened around her could be hidden from his eyes. Lu Shi shook his head. Ever since Jiang Pingji asked Su Ku to convey her attitude, he had let his guard down. He did not expect that his daughter would send Meng Liang to the afterlife. Did she need to be so efficient? I am not omniscient and omnipotent. How can I know everything? Lu Shi felt a slight pain in his forehead, but he was already dead. What happened was done and there was no turning back. He might as well think about what to do next. You used Meng Liang's life as a favor to Meng Hun. Based on your temperament, you must have gotten more benefits than that. Did you blackmail the Mengs? Blackmail? That was not a good way to put it. It was called asking for benefits openly. Jiang Pingji revealed a little of her plan. Lu Shi looked at her helplessly. Didn't I give you the list before? If you still need more, go to the accounts room and get more. Lu Shi said with some forbearance. You are the only child in the family. These are all yours. Why do you have to be so calculative with me? To put it nicely, his daughter had her own abilities. To put it bluntly, she was estranged from him. That was not what Lucy wanted. Jiang Pingji was silent for a while. If it were in the past she would not have bothered to explain. But now she felt that it was not a good idea to do so. Father, you misunderstood me. It's not that I am calculative with you. I just don't want to be involved with the aristocratic families. Jiang Pingji hesitated for a while. Lucy looked at her in shock. She said, starting from scratch it will be easy to distinguish in the future. Whether it was Su Ku, Meng Hun or Qiguan Rang, all three of them had one thing in common: they had low social status. It wasn't that she couldn't attract people of high status. In fact, as long as she put up the banner of Lu Shi's son, she could also attract people of a certain status with Lu Shi's halo. As the son, she could also attract people of a certain status. Why didn't she do that? Because she did not want to. If she got involved too early she would be passive in the future. Jiang Pingji's goal was very clear, so in order to achieve it she needed to formulate a series of plans. Considering the current social climate, she decisively gave up the more convenient path of relying on her father. The benefits in the early stages were indeed great, but what about the middle and later stages? She wanted to nurture her own team and talents, not those who were only thinking about clan bloodlines. Don't be fooled by how those aristocratic families boasted about their family name and bloodline, and how they preached their loyalty. In fact, for the benefit of the clan and for their own benefit under special circumstances, they were willing to give up their backbone, reservedness, and righteousness. Are they like a piece of poison wrapped in sugar? Medicine, at first it tasted sweet and greasy, but when the sugar coating was finished only poison was left. Looked tempting, but it was extremely delicious. The path she was going to take would inevitably touch upon the most fatal interest of the aristocratic families: education. Why were aristocratic families called aristocratic families? This was because they had money in their hands and food in their granaries. They monopolized education and made studying a privilege for a minority of people. They also indirectly monopolized the imperial court. Talents were all from aristocratic families. 1 generation, 2 generation, 3 generation. After generations, the officials in the imperial court were more or less related by blood or marriage. When this group of people worked together, how could the emperor have a say? Did they want to attack them? They didn't mind firing the emperor first. Jiang Pingji had enough of this ignorant era. Out of 100 people she met outside, 99 of them were illiterate. In addition to education there was also the land. Were the farmers in Dongqing not hardworking? They were very hardworking. Jiang Pingji was very clear about this. They worked before dawn and only returned home with their hoes when the sun set. They worked from dawn to dusk and they couldn't even save a surplus of food throughout the year. If they were unfortunate enough to encounter a natural disaster, they couldn't eat a full meal throughout the year. Perhaps a large number of people would starve to death. Starving people everywhere. Was this just a word? This was a living hell on earth. But why were they so hardworking but still unable to eat enough and wear warm clothes? Was the land too barren, or was the tax exploitation too vicious? Although Jiang Pingji was criticized by the system for not going out much, in fact she was trying her best to understand this era from books and understand their lives through chatting with the farmers. The more she understood, the clearer Jiang Pingji was about the path she wanted to take. This path was very long, but she would try her best to plan and perfect it. Obviously, in the path she planned, the aristocratic families were not allowed to interfere in the beginning. If they were, the development in the middle and later stages would be more restrained. She wanted to promote education so that all children could study, regardless of their status. Would the aristocratic families be willing? She wanted to reform the land so that all the hardworking people could reap the benefits they deserved. Would the aristocratic families be willing? Her ideas touched the most important thing in their lives. They would use all their strength to oppose it. When the time came, would they listen to her or would she listen to others? As a son of an aristocratic family, Jiang Pingji's ideas were simply unorthodox. He was a living freak. Why? Lucy held back for a long time before he asked these few words with trembling lips. Jiang Pingji asked calmly, "Father, do you think there is a difference between being the only one and being one?" She was very clear that because of her cheap mother's influence and spoilers, Lucy had long been mentally prepared for this reality. In terms of stirring up trouble, Lucy fully supported her and supported her to take that path. Therefore she wanted to have a frank talk with the other party. The only one. Lucy was smart and instantly understood what she meant. What was the only one? There was only one since ancient times. What was one? One among all the living things. The meaning of Jiang Pingji's words was very clear. She wanted to step on the aristocratic families, promote education, reform the land, and enlighten the people. To the small group of people in the aristocratic families she was indeed hateful. But to all the living things and people in the future she might be the only one to reach this step since ancient times. Those who came later would not be able to catch up. Jiang Pingji smiled suddenly and said confidently, "If father thinks that I am disobedient and unfilial, it is still not too late." She was still young. If Lucy wanted to deal with her, there was nothing she could do, right? Of course, if Lucy wanted to keep her, he had to have the ability to do so. Lucy choked. The shock in his heart turned into helplessness. "You know that I won't hurt you. If not for the fact that you have a strong backing, why would you say this to me?" Because she was sure of it, she dared to talk to him frankly. "To your father, there is nothing more important than your mother, you and your 2 elder brothers. Besides, even if the aristocratic families were weakened as the future royal family, who would treat the Lu family unfairly? Lucy was a smart person." Chapter 222. The words father and son had already been spoken about, and unknowingly, the relationship between the two had become closer. They didn't have to hide things from each other anymore. Lucy thought for a while after hearing Jiang Pingji's plan. He said, "I know Meng Zhan. He's arrogant and thinks too much of himself. If you use Meng Liang as a hostage and ask him for rice, not only will he give it to you, he might even give you more. Won't he cheat? For example, mixing real rice with fake rice to confuse people? Or setting up an ambush in the transport team?" Jiang Pingji was confused. She didn't think Meng Zhan's way of thinking could be understood by normal people. Lucy shook his head. 2,000 dawn of rice is a huge sum of money for the people. Even the gentry doesn't have that much money. But for a noble family like the Mengs, it's not even a drop in the bucket. The Mengs have been in Xianxia for so many years. You can't even imagine how rich they are. Seeing Jiang Pingji was deep in thought, Lucy took the opportunity to say, "Xianxia has a lot of land and a lot of people. Not to mention the Mengs during the Xia dynasty, the Mengs have been in Xianxia for decades after Dongqing was established. Every year they stole enough money and rice to support 100,000 troops. So Meng Zhan wouldn't care about 2,000 dawn of rice. According to Lucy's understanding of him, he might even generously add another 1,000 dawn of rice. That would be a total of 3,000 dawn. You kidnapped Meng Liang under Meng Hun's name. It's almost impossible for Meng Zhan to do anything to the rice. Maybe he'll even send you new rice." Lucy snorted. Meng Zhan wasn't a good person when it came to personal matters, but he was not to be underestimated when it came to official matters. Jiang Pingji understood everything after hearing Lucy's words. "Father, you mean Meng Zhan won't do anything to the rice? Instead, he'll send it over openly to show that he's a good man and Meng Hun is a hypocrite who doesn't care about the death of his wife and daughter for some rice?" "Yes. According to my understanding of him, he'll probably do that. He's good at disgusting people. The person who knew you the most could be your opponent." Lu Shi and Meng Zhan had broken off their relationship. The two families did not keep in touch with each other and there were many conflicts in private. Lu Shi knew Meng Zhan very well. Meng Zhan was an extremely proud man. He wouldn't condescend himself to fight with a lowly person like Meng Hun. In other words, he didn't care. Jiang Pingji secretly sneered and said, "If that's the case, it's really disgusting." If Meng Liang was still alive, the Mengs would have used 2,000 dawn of food to exchange for his safety. Meng Hun would have become the laughing stock of the world and his reputation would have been ruined. Unfortunately, Meng Liang was already dead. If the Mengs dared to use this method to disgust her, she would let them know what disgust was. But then again, he didn't expect the Meng family to be so rich. Their accumulation was so rich that it made people envious. If I had known that he was so rich, I would have asked for 30 to 50,000 stones. Asking for a mere 2,000 stones will only make people laugh at me in secret." Jiang Pingji added unhappily, "The Mengs are so generous. I reckon they can take out tens of thousands of dawn of grain without a frown." Lucy almost choked on his own saliva. Was his daughter a bandit in her past life? 2,000 dawn should be enough. "I'm afraid you can't afford more." Lucy said, "Don't treat the Mengs like a sucker. They won't care about such a small profit. But if they ask for too much, I'm afraid they'll really get angry. How could 2,000 dong and 20,000 dong be the same? In Lu Shi's opinion, a newborn calf is not afraid of a tiger. It was a perfect saying for his daughter, who would cause trouble for the Mengs. Not only did she do it, but she also killed Meng Liang and abducted Meng Hun, who had a grudge against the Mengs. How much of a grudge? But thinking about what Amin had said, he could understand. Maybe it was fate. His daughter and the Mengs were born to be incompatible. Jiang Pingji thought about it and asked, 2,000 dong of grain is just a small profit for the Mengs. What about other families? Lu Shi didn't understand and asked, what? She said, I wanted to use this batch of grain to temporarily suppress the rising price. Father, you should know that the incident in Meng County in Song Prefecture hasn't spread yet. Only a few people know about it. When the whole world knows about it, I'm afraid that Hejin County will be affected. It took less than half a month to travel from Hejin County to Meng County in Song Prefecture. Once the chaos in Meng County spread, the people would naturally panic and it would be normal for the grain price to rise. It will definitely be affected, but 2,000 dong, if you want to make a profit from it, it's a good opportunity. You can easily increase the price by 3 to 5 times. After all, it's a free gift from the Mengs. But it's definitely not enough to suppress the grain price. After all, he was the chief of Hu County and he lived in this era. His prediction was naturally more accurate than Su Ku and Jiang Pingji's. It's not enough? Jiang Pingji was slightly stunned. 1 stone was 50 kilograms, which was 100 catties. It was enough to feed a family of 4 for 40 to 50 days. That was still considered enough to fill their stomachs. Many people lived frugally and matched their grains with other foods to last for a longer time. Hejin County wasn't big. Excluding the gentry, there were only about 20 to 30,000 people. Most of the people had leftover grain from the previous year. How could it not be enough? Chapter 223. 2,000 dong of grain had the same effect as 20,000 dong. What else could he say? Lu Shi asked, daily purchase limit. It's not bad. But what if some people buy the grain repeatedly for several days in a row? Jiang Pingji's aim was to suppress the grain price. That meant that when the prices of other grain stores skyrocketed, she would sell the grain at the same price as usual, or at a slightly higher price than usual. The people would naturally choose to buy from her. Most of the commoners lived a frugal life. If they could be cheap, they would. They would not be extravagant. They were not going to starve to death. It was just delaying the purchase of cheaper grain for a few days. Of course, they were willing to wait. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, as long as we secretly spread the word that the grain store is working for the people's welfare. That's why we insist on only raising the price a little when the grain price of other grains skyrocketed. Under the premise of the daily purchase limit, if some people buy too much grain for several days in a row, the other people will definitely not be able to buy the grain. That way the people will understand the grain store's painstaking efforts. And the pressure will be less. Lu Shi was stunned by what he heard. He thought that his daughter was inexperienced and didn't understand the world. That was why she came up with the idea of suppressing the grain price with 2,000 dong of grain. Looking at her now, she was indeed inexperienced, but she had a sharp mind. He only needed to point out a flaw and she was able to correct it. Not to mention anything else, just this flexibility was enough to make him feel ashamed and admirable. If she followed her plan, the grain store would probably sell a few thousand dong of grain and win the hearts of the people in Hejin County. She would earn enough money and fame at the same time. Due to the public opinion, the other grain stores would not be able to increase the price even if they wanted to. As long as they could delay until the autumn harvest, the grain price would naturally decrease, and the people would not have to worry about food shortage. But if that's the case, the profit will be less than expected. Jiang Pingji shook her head with pity. She originally wanted to sell 2,000 dong of grain for 10,000 dong to trick the gentry families in Hejin County. It seemed that she had to give up that tempting idea. She had too little grain in her hands. It was not enough to play such a big game. If Lu Shi knew what she was thinking, he would not be able to help but roll his eyes. Her current plan was enough to make people hate her. If she still wanted to trick the gentry families in Hejin County, she would not want to live in Hejin County. Cutting one's path to wealth was like killing one's parents. The landowning households could have used this opportunity to clear out the stockpiled grain in their granaries and earned their fill to their heart's content. Because of Jiang Pingji's interference, the market share of grain prices in Hejian County for the next month would be taken away by her. She could not be so shameless. Lu Shi did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he had more confidence in Jiang Pingji. Those who were truly capable, no matter how they started, even if they had a bad hand, would still be able to reach unimaginable heights. There was no doubt that the daughter before him was such a person. Lu Shi smiled faintly and said, "It's good that we can earn it. After all, it's a gift from the Mengs." Shihu 10 dawn of grain Lu Meng. Doff of Lu 2 dawn of 6 Lu dawn of Lu, she said. As the saying goes, a pillow comes when you doze off. If the Mengs were really kind enough to send an extra 1,000 dawn of grain, it would be great. 2. Father and 6 doff Lu 2. Shi Lu dawn Wu 6 dang Wu. The father and son tacitly ignored the expressions on the faces of the Mengs when they brought the food and Meng Liang's body away. That kind of scene would definitely be very beautiful. They wanted to use their generosity to humiliate others, but reality slapped them hard in the face. Meng Hun was a hypocrite? He wasn't. He had guts and brains. He cheated the Mengs of a few thousand dawn of grain, and he even dared to wield a butcher's knife against their baby to avenge his wife and daughter. The Mengs wanted to trample on Meng Hun's dignity, but Jiang Pingji did the same. The development of the troops was very smooth. Jiang Pingji had removed the troublemakers early on. The remaining people, with the cooperation of Meng Hun and Su Ku, naturally could not cause any trouble. Instead, they were assimilated into the life of the troops and gradually accepted the status quo. What was so good about being a bandit? Even the bandits themselves thought the same. The people of the world looked down on thieves like chickens and thieves like dogs. Who would want to be a bandit that was despised by others if they could eat their fill, wear their clothes, and live a decent life? Looking at the money the others received, the bandits secretly laughed at them. What could they do with such a small amount of money? It would be gone after a few meals in the tavern. How long could they keep it? But when they learned that every member of the troops was given seasonal clothes every season, food and accommodation were taken care of by the head family, and the monthly money was freely used and there were occasional rewards. The only downside was that the training was hard, but it was much better than working in the fields. It was better than bandits like them who had unstable businesses and lives. So they were tempted, jealous, and angry. This was because they discovered that the rewards were all taken from their stockade. Although they were bandits who robbed houses, their savings were almost zero. The real wealth was with the heads of the families. Bah! I earn my hard-earned money with a knife, but in the end all the money goes into the pockets of the heads of the families. It's the same as working for the family. These people work for the family and get their own money while we can only watch others. What the hell is this? It was the same as working for the family. Their work was illegal while the others were legal. Naturally, the treatment was different. Then what do you want? Do you really want to work for this family? Several bandits secretly gathered together and discussed in low voices. Their faces were full of struggle. After a long time, the first bandit to complain said, "I'm afraid of starving. As long as I can eat my fill, save some money, marry a wife, and give birth to 2 fat boys, it doesn't matter who I work for. I can only watch those heads enjoy themselves all year round. I've risked my life and done so many things against my conscience, but I haven't even seen a sow." His position had begun to waver, and the others who were originally not firm also began to waver. "I'm also afraid of starving. The family of the head of the family is really nice. They have white steamed buns for every meal, and sometimes they even have scallion pancakes. What if we don't agree? Didn't they say they would sell us to human traffickers?" One of them said timidly, "We all know what kind of people those human traffickers are. It's better to work hard and try to be chosen by the head family. Right? What was so good about being a bandit?" Chapter 224. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms and leaned against a wooden pole. She raised her eyebrows as she looked at the training scene in front of her. "I thought it would take a lot of effort to tame these bandits, or at least 10 days to half a month. I didn't expect that you could tame them in just 3 to 5 days. She smiled at Su Ku, who was standing beside her. "They are working very hard. To prevent any possible hidden dangers, Suku scattered all the bandits he took in and inserted them into the original troops. However, looking at them now, those who trained so hard that veins were popping out of their foreheads, and it was obvious that they had used all their strength, were actually that group of bandits. In comparison, the original troops were also working very hard, but it was easy to see the difference between them. That surprised Jiang Pingji. Except for a few evil people, most of them are ordinary people. They just want food and a peaceful family. If they had other choices, they wouldn't have taken the risk to become bandits. I only showed them the benefits of being part of the troops. I didn't need to do much else to make them want to stay. In order to stay, they will try their best to show off their abilities. To put it bluntly, whoever gave them milk was their mother. They were willing to follow and work for whoever could give them a good life. Suka didn't need to say much. He only needed to let the original troops reveal a little about their current treatment. When it came to these bandits, no amount of flowery words could compare to the benefits they could get. Jiang Pingji calculated the time in her mind and said, "In a few days the food from Meng County will be delivered here. We should also prepare in advance. Let's first arrange people to guard the border of Hejian County and Meng County. Let's find out the details of the food team." Suka heard her mention this and frowned worriedly. He asked, "If they deliver the food, how will we take it? The Lus can't get involved in this matter to avoid being suspected by the Mengs. But if we let Coach Meng lead the people there in person, I'm afraid that the food team might be deceptive and suddenly attack. If that's the case, won't it put Coach Meng in danger?" Jiang Pingji laughed and said, "When did I say that I would personally send people to take the food away?" In fact, Jiang Pingji had no intention of showing her face. The more flaws she revealed, the easier it would be for others to use against her. "So, Langjun, what do you mean?" Suka's eyes flashed as if he had thought of something. "Bamboo pieces." At some point she was holding a slender piece of bamboo between her fingers. It seemed to have been removed from an old bamboo slip. "We only need to write down what we need to do at each step and let them carry it out themselves. First, order them to put the food in the designated place, then use the bamboo pieces to lure them to another place. Lure the tiger away from the mountain and then move the food away." Su Ming looked hesitant. "But 2,000 dawn of food isn't a small amount. Even if we send everyone in the army, we might not be able to move all the food in a short period of time. If the Meng family returns to the future and catches us unprepared, what should we do?" Jiang Pingji smiled and said mysteriously, "I have my own plan. Just wait and see." Suku. He suddenly felt an indescribable pain in the ass. It seemed like he was the brains of the other party, right? It felt like the roles were completely reversed. A few days later, the weather was getting warmer and warmer. Most people had already put on light spring clothes. The good-looking Langjuns wore flower hairpins and powder, long robes with wide sleeves. When they stood in the wind, they looked like they had ascended to immortality. Jiang Pingji couldn't stand the trend. She still wore no makeup and her clothes were plain and clean. At first glance she seemed to come from an ordinary family, but if one looked closely at the material of her clothes, one would know that her family wasn't simple. Jiang Pingji sat in a tea house at the closest station to Hejian County. She asked the owner of the tea house to bring her a big pot of tea. "Lanting, the taste of this tea. It must be hard for you to eat it." Qiguan Rang glanced at the clay bowl she was holding and gulped down the tea. He looked at the shabby surroundings and shook his head. Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. "Nothing will happen to me if I drink it. Why can't I drink it?" Compared to the delicate tea she usually drank, the big pot of tea was rough and simple. There was a slightly astringent taste in her mouth. But the tea house next to the station was for travelers to quench their thirst. You could drink it for 1 coin, so you could not expect the taste to be good. Qiguan Rang looked at Jiang Pingji's image again and again. He found it funny. At that moment, even if the person in front of him took the initiative to say that she was the Langjun of the Lu family in Hu County, no one would believe her. Jiang Pingji was not dressed in her usual refined attire. She was dressed in a dark coarse brown robe with 2 patches on her shoulders. Her long hair was tied up high and the hair tie was made from rice stalks. Her skin was a little darker than usual. Except for her delicate face and bright eyes, she looked like a farmer's boy. If she had not come to find him in the Lu family's carriage, Qiguan Rang would not have recognized her. It's easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. But it doesn't seem to make a difference to you. Jiang Pingji smiled and raised her eyebrows at him. She said, "Am I that delicate?" Qiguan Rang coughed. Jiang Pingji said she was not a delicate person, but she said he was. He decisively changed the topic. He covered his eyes with one hand and looked into the distance. "You said you wanted me to watch a good show. Where is it?" As soon as he finished speaking, there seemed to be smoke rising in the distance. Qiguan Rang's nerves tightened. He instantly understood Jiang Pingji's intention. That sucker really sent something over? Since there were others in the tea house, Qiguan Rang did not say it too clearly. He used a term that both of them could understand. Jiang Pingji looked in the direction Qiguan Rang was looking at. She smiled. "Do you dare to bet with me on whether this is a big fish or a small one?" Qiguan Rang asked her, "What is a big fish and what is a small fish?" "More than 2,000 is a big fish and less than 2,000 is a small fish. How about that?" Qiguan Rang hurriedly waved the feather fan in his hand and said, "I won't bet with you. I will definitely lose." Jiang Pingji had dragged him over to watch the show. She must have known the details of the grain team. If he were to bet with her on the amount of grain in the team, wouldn't he be asking for trouble? Whether it was big or small, the person in front of him would not lose. What was the point of betting? Boring. Chapter 225. The grain team transporting the grain was very large, and there were more than 200 soldiers dressed as military officers on both sides of the team. Each of the soldiers was holding a gleaming spear in their hands. Even if someone coveted this batch of grain and wanted to take advantage of the situation, they would have to think twice before doing so. The laborers were sweating from head to toe. Their faces were red and their clothes were drenched in sweat. They were overjoyed when they saw a tea house next to the station. "Sir, we've been transporting the grain for so long. We're all tired. Why don't we rest for a while before we continue?" The leader of the laborers approached them with a smile and talked to the leader of the soldiers who were guarding the grain. They were all made of flesh and blood, not made of steel. After transporting so much food from Meng County to here, the cooks were physically and mentally exhausted. However, the soldiers on horseback were blind and could not see. Anyone who was slow would be whipped. Luckily, Hejian County was right in front of them. It would only take them half a day to get there. Otherwise, someone would die of exhaustion if they continued like this. The leader of the soldiers was the one who had been spared by Jiang Pingji on purpose. He was eager to make up for his mistake by performing meritorious deeds. After receiving the task of escorting the grain, he had been constantly squeezing the laborers' energy and urging them to travel day and night, hoping to rescue Meng Liang as soon as possible. As the days passed, he felt more and more uneasy. He kept feeling that something bad might happen if he delayed any longer. Coupled with his eagerness to perform meritorious deeds, he naturally did not notice the fatigue on the laborers' faces. Even if he did, he wouldn't care. They were just a few laborers. How could they compare to the second Langjun of the Mengs? If something happened to Meng Liang because they were too slow, who would take the blame? However, now that they were only half a day away from Hejian County, the anxiety in his heart had eased a lot. In addition, he also felt a little tired, so he simply followed the leader's words and waved his hand to let the whole team rest for an hour. After receiving permission, the cook leader felt as if he had been pardoned. He hurriedly shouted to the cook at the back of the team. "Hurry up. The tea house is right in front. Let's go there to rest and have a cup of tea." When everyone heard this, they were instantly motivated. The long grain team was like a wriggling worm, slowly approaching the tea house. This tea house often received caravans traveling from the south to the north, so it had seen big scenes before. The lady boss hurriedly put on a smile and greeted a few soldiers who had entered the tea house. The rest of the soldiers found a random place to sit outside. "Really? Why do you have to do this?" Qiguan Rang did not know whether to laugh or cry. "If I didn't do this, it would be hard to get close to them." Jiang Pingji had been busy for a long time, so her mouth was dry. After drinking a bowl of tea, she felt refreshed. She whispered to Qiguan Rang, "There's no problem with the grain team. It's not 2,000 dawn, it's more than 3,000 dawn. The Mengs are really generous. I just don't know if they'll still be smiling in 2 days." Qiguan Rang raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, "I only saw you bustling about and trying to get information from people. You didn't even get close to the grain wagons that were being guarded by the soldiers. How did you know that there was no problem with the grain? You even knew the specific amount, Jiang Pingji said. That's easy. Look at the weight of the wheels. The weight of the same bag of grains and sand is different. I also went to get some information from those cooks and I can roughly estimate the total amount of food they have. Although Jiang Pingji was busy, she was actually multitasking. She added in a low voice, "Of course I took the opportunity to get close to the grain team not to look at the grain." Qiguan Rang was suspicious. The main purpose of getting close to the grain team was not to look at the grain? Then what was it for? He frowned slightly and began to recall Jiang Pingji's actions during this period of time, hoping to guess her real intention. Don't keep thinking about it. I'm here to deliver something. If I don't take this opportunity to deliver it, it will be inconvenient to take action at other times, and it will easily arouse suspicion. Jiang Pingji smiled as she drank her tea. Her satisfied look was very much like a fox whose scheme had succeeded. Chapter 226. The food team set off again after a short rest in the tea house. Hejin County was not far away. They just needed to hold on for another half a day and they would be able to get rid of the heavy task. Many cooks had the same thought, as if their limbs were full of energy again. Finally, they arrived at the gate of Hejin County before sunset. Because of the long queue, the head of the entourage couldn't rush in like before. He had to be patient and wait for his turn. Just then, a clever-looking cook trotted to him and asked, "Sir, will we be done as long as we deliver the food into the city?" The head of the entourage rolled his eyes and said angrily, "Who told you that? Just wait for the order. Don't mind what you don't have to do." If the cook asked him, who would he ask? The food team was huge and attracted a lot of attention along the way. Meng Hun should have known that they were coming. However, he still didn't know what the thief wanted to do. Where, when, and how he would take over the food. The only thing he could do now was to wait patiently for the thief to send his men and hand over the food. As he was thinking, it was almost his turn. The head of the entourage couldn't help but frown as he looked at the towering city gate. Since the guards at the city gate were rotational and the guards on duty today were not the same as the previous ones, they didn't recognize the head of the entourage as the culprit of the murder at the city gate. They only saw the food team, so they couldn't help but feel suspicious. A guard walked up and asked, "Where did you come from? What's in the cart?" He looked at the cooks and the soldiers who were escorting the food with his beady eyes. He was thinking about how to get something out of them. They had done this kind of thing many times. They secretly took advantage of the commoners entering and exiting the city gates and asked them to pay some money to show their filial piety. The commoners did not fight with the officials. Even if the guards of the city gates were not considered officials, most of the commoners would still grit their teeth and be taken advantage of. As long as they didn't make a big deal out of it, the officials would turn a blind eye to it. That was why being a guard at the city gate was a lucrative job. After saying that, the guard swaggered up and was about to search the food in the cart. He even pushed away a cook who was in his way. The cook didn't dare to say anything. He just stared at the head of the entourage. "It feels pretty solid. Can't you have someone in charge tell us what's in the car?" The guard raised his hand and pressed on the sack of grain. Just by feeling it, he could more or less guess what was inside. But he wanted to stir up trouble. Since the manager of the grain team took the initiative to give him money, he couldn't just let it go. So he pretended to pull out the knife from his waist and stab the grain bag. "I think there's something wrong with the things in the cart. Let's open them and check." However, he had only pulled out half of his saber when a black whip descended from the sky and lashed at his arm, drawing out dripping blood. What a blind dog. The head of the entourage put away his whip coldly and watched the guard rolling on the ground in pain. The rest of the civilians noticed the commotion. They were all terrified, fearing that they would be hurt by the head of the entourage's whip. "How dare you lowly dogs touch the grain escorted by the Mengs?" With a sneer, the head of the entourage shouted, "Go!" The horse obediently moved forward and was about to enter the city. At that moment, the cook in charge of the cart saw something. He was confused and pulled out the thing under the grain bag. This thing wasn't there before? As soon as he unfolded it, he saw a black human head drawn on it. The cook was startled and screamed, which alerted the head of the entourage. He frowned impatiently and scolded, "What are you screaming for?" The cook hurriedly knelt down regardless of the stones on the ground. His hands trembled as he held the rough cloth. Sir, I didn't mean to disturb you. It's just that, this damn thing. The thing in the cook's hands caught the head of the entourage's attention. He rode forward and grabbed the rough cloth from the cook's hands. He unfolded it and his face darkened immediately. How could he not see it when the cook couldn't? The human head drawn on the rough cloth belonged to the second Langjun of the Mengs, Meng Liang. Even though the charcoal was rough, it retained the most distinctive features of the human head. It was easy to tell who the person was at first glance. The head of the entourage clenched his fists and yelled, "Tell me, where did you get this?" The guard whose arm was broken was still rolling on the ground in pain. The cook didn't dare to hide anything and told the truth. "General, this thing was found under the grain sacks. Before, there was no such thing." The cook broke into a cold sweat and felt uneasy as he thought of the human head drawn on the rough cloth. "Grain bag." The head of the entourage murmured. He jumped off the horse and waved his hand to push away the cooks who were blocking his way. He walked straight to the cart and examined it carefully. To his surprise, he also found a piece of coarse cloth of the same texture. There were no human heads painted on it but strange patterns. All of a sudden, the head of the entourage felt a chill in his heart. He yelled, "Everyone, check the cart and see if there's anything suspicious." While he was feeling uneasy, the guards on duty did not let him go. They all stepped forward and tried to pull out their swords. "Where did you come from? How dare you hurt people in public?" The head of the entourage sneered and said, "I not only hurt people but I also have the guts to kill people. I'll kill you if you come any closer." As soon as he finished speaking, the soldiers who were responsible for escorting the grain rushed forward and pointed their spears at the guards. The two sides were in a stalemate. However, there were only 20 to 30 guards at the gate, while there were more than 200 soldiers escorting the grain. At the moment, they found 1 to 3 pieces of rough cloth in different sizes on each cart. It was obvious that they were torn randomly. Most of the rough cloth had strange patterns on them and some of them were rough and ugly characters. The head of the entourage put the rough cloth together with a cold face. Turned out to be a picture. There were some small characters next to the picture. The head of the entourage read it carefully. His face turned purple after reading it. "The delivery is so slow. If you want Meng Liang to live, send the grain here as soon as possible. We won't wait for you." Meng Hun, the traitor of the Mengs. This was so arrogant. The head of the entourage wanted to tear all the rough cloth, but he couldn't do that. Meng Hun's words were very clear. They needed the grain badly and they were running out of patience. If they delayed any longer, Meng Liang's life would be in danger. Chapter 227. He forced himself to calm down and asked his subordinate to find an experienced hunter who was familiar with the mountains near Hejian to lead the way. As for entering the city, no way. The location on the map was outside the city, not inside. It would be a waste of time to enter the city. But before that he had to figure out one thing. When did Meng Hun's men put the cloth on the wagons? Not only was he confused, but the cooks who were responsible for transporting the grain were also confused. To ensure that the amount of grain was correct, they would check the wagons carefully every time they went to a place for repairs. Therefore it was almost certain that before the last repair, the grain cart did not have these strange coarse cloth on it. The head of the entourage also knew that, so he didn't waste any more time on it. Instead he looked at all the cooks suspiciously. He asked, "Do any of you remember anyone who got close to the wagons?" That was a tough question. The cooks couldn't help but put on a bitter face. There were too many people who could get close to the wagons. Who could remember? However, one of the cooks was smart enough to ask, "Sir, could it be when we were at the tea house?" The tea house was a place with a lot of people. An ordinary-looking person wouldn't raise any suspicion. But that was quickly denied. Another cook said, "You can't accuse someone wrongly. Everyone was beside the wagons during the repair. How could there be anyone suspicious?" These things obviously appeared out of nowhere. People in that era were afraid of ghosts and gods. They often liked to explain things that they didn't know. The head of the entourage was annoyed. He scolded, "Nonsense. How can you believe in ghosts and gods? Think about it carefully. Who could it be? If no one touched the wagons and left these things behind, then the only reason was that there was a mole in the team. The head of the entourage had basically given his verdict after he came to this reliable conclusion. The cooks all shook their heads. Some of them suspected that it was Jiang Pingji who brought the tea, but it was not a reliable guess. Apart from Jiang Pingji, the owner of the tea house and the waiter also brought tea. Compared to the latter two, the former didn't get close to the wagons. How could they stuff the cloth into the wagons? The cooks looked at each other and became nervous. They were afraid that the head of the entourage would suspect that they were spies. The head of the entourage glanced at everyone, trying to find the mole among them. In the end, everyone looked like a mole, but no one looked like a mole. He had no choice but to put this detail aside for the time being and prepare to transport the food to the destination. It was easy to find an experienced hunter who was familiar with the terrain. After promising a large sum of money, the hunter agreed to lead the way. However, this made things difficult for the laborers who transported the grain. The mountain road was steep and not suitable for the grain carts to travel. Therefore, they could only give up on the grain cart and choose to carry the grain bags on their shoulders to carry the grain up the mountain. However, this mysterious joke seemed to have just begun. Someone found a bamboo slip at the place where the map was drawn. On it was written, "How obedient, but your speed is disappointing. I can't wait any longer. Sending the food to this place is a punishment for your inefficiency. Meng Hun, the trader of the Meng family." The head of the entourage's face turned as dark as the bottom of a pot when he saw the bamboo slip and the coarse cloth under it. At this time a soldier asked him, "Boss, what should we do now?" The head of the entourage was breathing heavily. Although he was not carrying the grain, the mountain road was steep and he was wearing heavy armor. Naturally, he was sweating and breathing heavily. What else can we do? Just do as the higher-ups say. Meng Liang was still in Meng Hun's hands. If they dared not do as he said and angered Meng Hun, he might kill Meng Liang. By then they would be the ones crying. For the sake of Meng Liang's life, they had to obey. Fortunately, the destination marked on the second map was not far from here. The old hunter told them that they could get there in about 15 minutes. You're fast this time. But I've already left. It's interesting to see you delivering the grain. But I haven't had enough. I want to see Meng Liang. Deliver the grain here. By Meng Hun, the trader of the Mengs. At this time, the head of the entourage was so angry that he punched the tree trunk next to him, making a dull thud. The old hunter looked at the map and said in fear, "Sir, we can't go to this place." "Why not?" the head of the entourage asked with a cold face. The old hunter's hands were trembling. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He had thought it would be a good job to lead the way, but now it seemed that it was not going to be easy. "Sir, this place is a bandit's hideout. I've seen it from afar when I was hunting before. The people living there are beasts who kill without batting an eye. If we go there..." The old hunter stammered out the reason. The head of the entourage sneered and said, "Just lead the way. Cut the crap. It was just a bandit stockade. He had so many men. Couldn't he handle it?" However, there was one thing he did not understand. Why did Meng Hun want to deliver the grain to the bandit stockade? Was there an ambush? Thinking of this, the head of the entourage felt uneasy. He sent a smart soldier to check it out. The soldier came back soon and said, "There's no one in the bandit stockade." No one. The head of the entourage was confused, but he had to force himself to do it. "But I found this at the gate of the stockade." The soldier respectfully presented a bamboo slip and a piece of coarse cloth to the head of the entourage. The head of the entourage was already uneasy when he saw it. He was afraid that it was another trick. He opened it and saw that it was Meng Hun's message again. "The grain is in the yard of the bandit stockade. That bastard Meng Liang is at the place marked on the map. Don't try to play any tricks. Otherwise that bastard's life will be in danger. By Meng Hun, the trader of the Mengs." The head of the entourage calmed down. He sneered and said, "Coward. Coward." Meng Hun wouldn't have put on such a show if he was not afraid of the Meng's authority. He was afraid that he would be surrounded and killed by his soldiers when they were handing over the grain. What a coward. The head of the entourage sneered and raised his hand. "You bring the grain here. The rest of you come with me to save the second Langjun." Since Meng Hun was so cowardly, it was obvious that he did not have much confidence. If he could take advantage of the situation and kill them while they were unprepared, he could bring Meng Hun's head back to report. That would be a great merit. They didn't intend to kill Meng Hun. but he was digging his own grave. Even a clay figurine would get angry. Sir. Chapter 228. Qiguan Rang fluttered his feather fan and said to Jiang Pingji, "You're too evil. If that's the case, you've misunderstood me. When have I ever been bad? Who can testify?" Jiang Pingji looked innocent. Even though Qiguan Rang was experienced and knowledgeable, he was choked by Jiang Pingji's shamelessness. Testify? He was the witness, okay? The viewers in the live stream were both heartbroken and laughing. They could no longer hold back the power in their bodies. Shameless Tianxia Wudi, ha, I can testify. Please look at my ID. Serene butterfly shatters dreams. To tell you the truth, the host is already invincible. Therefore it was clear at a glance whether she was a good person or not. Gigi Kongting. If I transmigrated to the host's world and became her enemy, I don't think I could survive 3 episodes. It wasn't that their rank wasn't high enough, but that their opponent's rank was too high. From the beginning to the end, not only did he have something on them, he even made them run around in circles. He was simply too evil. From the perspective of the live stream, the audience could not see the expression of the unlucky guy who had been fooled by the streamer. They could only listen to the conversation between her and Qiguan Rang, trying to figure out what was happening outside. When they put themselves in that situation, many of the audience suddenly felt that the unlucky guy was about to be played to death. In Yueja Zhuga Qinma. 3 episodes? The brother above is very confident. I feel like I can only live for 1 episode. Billy, previous post only 1 episode? Are you worthy of your ID? Sans Hisong Xingningsher. Why do you guys have to torture yourselves to stand opposite the host? If I transmigrated, I would definitely hug the host's thigh tightly and let her bring me along to show off and fly. From then on, I would get a promotion and a raise in salary. I would get promoted and get rich. I would marry a tall, rich and handsome man and walk towards the pinnacle of my life. Jiang Pingji looked at the densely packed discussions on the bullet screen. Her eyes flickered and she smiled. Qiguan Rang was keenly aware of her emotions. He waved the feather fan in his hand even more vigorously. Do you still need to prove it? Landon, you are really... I feel sorry for Xiaoyu. Qiguan Rang raised his eyebrows and stared at her. In the end he was speechless. She really didn't know how Suku could endure his bad temper. He was truly shameless to such an extent. His actions were deviant and even somewhat hooligan. Even Qiguan Rang, who liked to use tricks, could not help but admire Jiang Pingji. She was much more evil than he was. The grain team itself was already exhausted. They had to carry the grain up the mountain and run all over the place. They could even lose half of their lives. The soldiers who were escorting the grain were not that tired and could still fight. However, after going through this torment, the elite soldiers had also become exhausted. When the leader of the troops escorting the rations turned around and attacked, even though he had 200 elite soldiers and more than 400 laborers transporting the rations, which was 6 times more than Jiang Pingji's troops, Qiguan Rang did not have the slightest doubt as to who would remain standing with a smile until the end. Other than Lu Lanting, who else could it be? Jiang Pingji did not continue the topic. Instead, she looked at the fan in his hand that was making a squeaking sound. Are you hot? Qiguan Rang was confused by her sudden question. A little. The cellar is a little stuffy, but we'll be able to get out after a while. The cellar they were currently in was the one where the women and children had been kept. Jiang Pingji had sent people to clean it up early in the morning and dig around it. The cellar was 3 to 4 times bigger than the previous one. Although the bandits in the village were not very good, they were good at hiding things. The cellar was well hidden. If someone had not been lucky enough to find the entrance, no one would have known that there was such a big cellar under the village. Jiang Pingji had kept the cellar for a while. Qiguan Rang's hand that was waving the fan paused. Could he say that part of the reason why he was so hot was because of the surrounding temperature and also because he was angry? Suddenly, Jiang Pingji's eyes narrowed and she whispered, "Get ready. Someone's coming." As soon as she finished speaking, the door above the cellar opened. The scout who had been sent out to gather information came back. "Legend, they're here." The scene made Qiguan Rang cast a sidelong glance at her. He could not help but wonder how good her hearing was to be able to detect the enemy's movement from so far away. "Get ready. Follow the plan. You two stay here and protect Wenjing. If anything happens to him, you'll have to pay for it yourself." Jiang Pingji raised her hand and dropped it. Two tall and strong men stepped out of the ranks and walked behind Qiguan Rang. They looked like they were guarding the door. The rest of the troops who had been hiding in the cellar climbed out of the cellar stairs in an orderly manner. Each of them carried a delicate crossbow on their back. The crossbow was different from the improved one Jiang Pingji had used before. It was only half the size of the improved one and had a shooting range of about 90 paces. It could fire 3 arrows at the same time and had a low recoil. It could be tied to one's arm and was very suitable for close-range ambushes. After Jiang Pingji conquered the bandit village, the place was not abandoned. Instead, it was carefully cleaned. There were more than 100 troops in the troops. It was not a big number, so the farm was not crowded. However, after she conquered a few more bandit villages and further expanded the troops, the farm would not be enough. She planned to make use of the waste and arrange some troops to stay in the original bandit village. On the one hand, it could relieve the pressure of the training ground, and on the other hand, it could observe the movements of other bandit villages. All the troops hid in various places in an orderly manner. They were all dressed in black coarse linen clothes and their figures blended in with the night. With the dim moonlight, it was difficult to find them even if they were very close. Jiang Pingji was very strict with discipline. The troops had to obey her orders. Whoever dared to disobey would be severely punished. In addition to the basic training, Meng Han, under Jiang Pingji's instructions, had to brainlessly instill the concept of obeying orders in them. Now it was beginning to work. Even the bandits who had been recruited some time ago obeyed her orders and stood guard everywhere. Jiang Pingji raised her 5 senses and listened to the footsteps. She curled her lips. These people are stupid enough to choose to split up. The head of the entourage led 150 elite soldiers to rescue Meng Liang, while the rest of the soldiers and cooks stayed behind to transport the food. Wen Jing could not help but frown. If this is really Coach Meng's idea, we will have a headache. No matter which group it is, Coach Meng's men will not be able to deal with them, Qiguan Rang said. Qiguan Rang said, Lanting's actions not only annoyed them, but also revealed her lack of confidence. The head of the food escorts will naturally be angry and want to kill. One group will go to rescue Meng Liang, and the other will ambush Coach Meng. Normally this is not wrong. With Meng Han's manpower, how could he steal the food from the hands of 400 laborers and 50 elite soldiers? Even if he set up an ambush, the odds of success were slim. Once the head of the food escorts felt that it was a trap, he could turn around and attack Meng Han from 2 sides. He could easily kill him. Chapter 229. You said it's normal. Jiang Pingji smiled, revealing her white teeth. She tilted her head and said, I've never been normal. Jiang Pingji could not only take down the cooks and the elite soldiers in the shortest time possible, but she could also move all the rations. When the leader came back, he would probably face a second round of ambush. It was all about efficiency. How could a weakling want to play dirty with her? In her territory, she could only do things at her own pace. Qiguan Rang waved his feather fan. Jiang Pingji suddenly asked him, Wenjing, when is the best time to strike? Of course we have to wait for them to finish moving the rations and then extinguish the torches as a signal. That's the best time to strike. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, if that's the case, we'll listen to Wenjing and extinguish the torches as a signal. If that's the case, Langjun will have to wait. It would take a long time for a few thousand dawn of rations to be piled up. Compared to the process, I value the result more. Facing enemies that outnumbered them, Jiang Pingji did not act rashly. Instead, she chose to face them calmly. She was indeed conceited, but it did not mean that she was brainless or impatient. On the contrary, she was like the most experienced hunter. In order to capture her prey, she could wait patiently. The viewers in the livestream were also watching quietly. Even though there was only the scene of the cooks moving the rations, the heavy and suffocating feeling of an approaching storm could be vaguely felt even through the screen and in another dimension. They could not help but feel nervous. At that moment, a viewer in the streaming room sent a bullet screen asking her, does the streamer plan to recruit these people? Give me a definite answer so I can be mentally prepared. What mentally prepared? The viewers in the streaming room all knew that Jiang Pingji, the streamer, killed people without hesitation. It was not fake like in dramas where she spat blood or smeared ketchup. It was real. Blood splattered, brains splattered, and heads flew into the sky. The scene was so real that it was frightening. Some of the viewers who could not accept it would vomit after watching it. They would be traumatized by the streaming room from then on. Of course, many viewers who liked thrills would try their best to squeeze in. How could ordinary people in peacetime watch a scene of murder? Jiang Pingji's sharp eyes saw the bullet screen. She thought for a while and sent a message. Host V, kill. Alright, a lot of the audience could prepare to cover their eyes. Sir, what should we do now? After moving the food, the head cook secretly wiped his sweat and asked the soldier who was temporarily in charge of the elite troops while panting heavily. The soldier held a torch in his hand. He looked around but didn't find anything unusual. Everyone pretend to retreat. Extinguish the torches along the way, then quietly hide in the houses and prepare for an ambush. The brightness of the torch was limited and visibility was low at night. Everything outside of the light was still pitch black. They held the torches but didn't find any ambush, so it was obvious that the enemy should be observing them from a distance. As long as they pretended to retreat, put out the torches quickly and quietly returned to the room of the bandits' stockade to ambush, they would definitely be able to catch Meng Hun unprepared. Dreams were plentiful but reality was harsh. When everyone obeyed the order and the torches were extinguished one by one, the viewers in the live streaming channel had wisely chosen to close their eyes. Buzz buzz buzz. The thin and dense sound of the bowstring was heard and the arrows broke through the air. A chill suddenly rose in the soldier's heart. Just as he was wondering where this ominous feeling came from, miserable screams came from all around him. His heart suddenly sank. Just as he was about to shout out the word, enemy attack, he suddenly felt a sharp pain as if his flesh was being dug into his arm. He subconsciously raised his other hand to touch it, and it turned out to be a slender arrow that pierced through his arm. They were ambushed. But hadn't they searched the surroundings before and found no trace of the enemy? At this moment, all kinds of thoughts filled his mind, but Jiang Pingji obviously didn't give him a chance to think more. Puff puff. The first round of volleys had just passed 2 breaths and the second round came quickly. The sound of arrows piercing into flesh rang in the silent night, making people's hair stand on end. The troops in the dark couldn't see the enemy's position, and they didn't need to aim specifically. They just needed to shoot randomly at the place where the torches were extinguished. It was normal to be shot to death by random arrows, and those who were still alive were the lucky ones. As for those who were unharmed, they would also go up and finish them off later. Jiang Pingji's plan was very clear. She would only leave 2 or 3 injured soldiers behind and let them bring Meng Liang's body back to Meng County in Song Prefecture. But these people thought they were smart and chose to split up, which gave Jiang Pingji an excellent opportunity to attack. She also participated in the ambush, and the crossbow in her hand was steady and fast. The audience in the streaming room could use the convenience of the camera to see how she shot the enemy's head with 1 arrow. Every arrow accurately pierced through the target's eyebrows and brain, killing them in 1 shot. After 10 rounds of volleys, the screams were completely extinguished. Jiang Pingji said coldly, "Those who are still breathing, send them on their way." It wasn't the first time that the troops had killed people, but their limbs were still a little weak. Even those who used to be bandits couldn't kill hundreds of people so easily. It was as if they weren't harvesting human lives but wheat after wheat. But they were all people who lived with swords and blood, so they didn't dare to hesitate and retreat. They all popped out from their hiding places. Some of them looked for those who were still breathing, while others moved quickly to carry the grain to the cellar. The cellar wasn't far, so they could move all the grain in a very short time. Nongqing belonged to the former group. Her hands were covered in sticky blood, but she was still calmly breaking the enemy's neck one after another. She looked like a Rakshasa ghost, which sent chills down everyone's spine. The bandits even wanted to take a detour. In less than a quarter of an hour, all the grain had been moved. Jiang Pingji coldly twitched the corner of her mouth. "Nongqing, bring me a pen." She casually dipped the tip of the pen into the blood on the ground and wrote rough, blood-red words on a roll of coarse cloth. "Those who go back on their words are the dogs of the Mengs. The Mengs want to use me as a scapegoat to humiliate my wife and daughter. They will be shamed even after death. Such despicable behavior is not worthy of the late Lord Meng. If you want to do this, don't blame me for retaliating. If Meng Liang doesn't die, How can I face the spirits of my deceased wife and daughter in heaven? By Meng Hun, the traitor of the Mengs. After she finished writing, she threw the pen away. A piece of coarse cloth fell to the ground and covered Meng Liang's face. Meng Liang's body, which had been suppressed in the ice cellar, was now wrapped in a rag and tossed among the other corpses. Although he was dead, Jiang Pingji could still make him shine again and bring out the last of his value. Let's go. We'll stop them again. Let's show them who's the real loser. Meng Hun didn't say a word. He secretly clenched his teeth as if he was holding back something. Finally, his eyes turned red and he vented all the anger in his heart. Qiguan Rang saw this and gently waved his feather fan. Chapter 230. Bang. He punched the tree trunk with one hand and held 2 pieces of cloth in the other. The head of the entourage was so angry that his liver was about to explode. Meng Hun, you've gone too far. He clenched his teeth in anger. He thought he could catch Meng Hun, but Meng Hun was still toying with him. Meng Hun only gave them directions to walk around in circles. It was like a monkey's show. If I catch you, I'll tear you to pieces. The old hunter who was leading the way was trembling in fear. His back was covered in sweat and he shivered in the cold night wind. Sir, are we still going? The old hunter asked carefully after the man had finished punching the tree. No. Let's go back. They're trying to lure us away. They want to take the rations away while I'm not here. I'm afraid they'll never know that I left someone to guard the rations. Meng Hun is just a stray dog. How can he swallow so much? He must be scared of choking to death. His eyes darkened and a murderous look flashed in his eyes. He didn't even need to think to know that if he kept searching he would only find more pieces of cloth. It was an obvious trick to lure them away. The purpose was to buy time so that they could take the rations away. Let's go back and surround Meng Hun. At the order of the head of the entourage, the exhausted soldiers pulled themselves together and hurried on with their sore legs. The old hunter was confused. He was only hired to lead the way. How would he know what was going on with the soldiers? He just needed to lead the way. When he got the promised money, he would never do such a thankless job again. The old hunter muttered to himself as he moved through the forest. He was as strong as a young man in his 20s. As a veteran hunter who had been hunting nearby for more than 30 years, he could move freely even with his eyes closed. He knew when to step and where to step. He knew it would be easier for him to do so. But it was not so easy for the soldiers. The route Jiang Pingji chose seemed to be smooth and without any traps, but it was full of hidden traps. It was very exhausting. The old hunter was already used to it, so naturally he did not feel anything. On the other hand, the soldiers were traveling at night and the terrain was so rough. How could they not be exhausted? The head of the entourage was eager to kill Meng Hun to avenge himself, so he kept urging them to hurry up. One of the soldiers panted and jogged. Boss, don't worry. Meng Hun definitely won't expect us to come back. That's right. With so much food, even if 400 people carried it, it would still take at least an hour. How could they move fast if they were carrying the food? Even if we can't catch them, we can still catch up to them. Leader, you don't have to be so anxious. Let us rest first. Hearing that, the head of the entourage's face darkened. He raised his hand and whipped the soldier. The man let out a blood-curdling scream as a long line of blood ran diagonally from one side of his forehead to the other side of his chin. He missed his footing and fell to the ground, rolling down the slope. There was a dull thud from below, and in an instant there was no more sound. The head of the entourage showed no mercy at all. Instead, he said in a sinister tone, "Speed is the most important thing in war. How can we waste our time for such a reason? Meng Hun is a cunning man. Who knows what other tricks he has up his sleeve? Anyone who wants to rest will end up like him." The other soldiers kept quiet out of fear. They just lowered their heads and held their breaths, afraid that they would be whipped if they breathed too loudly. The head of the entourage snorted and said proudly, "Since no one objects, let's continue our journey and capture Meng Hun alive. As long as we capture Meng Hun and make a great contribution, I'll ask the county chief to reward you. Then you'll have a meteoric rise. You'll have money, women, and status." Tempted by the benefits, the other soldiers forgot about the rising fear in their hearts and suddenly felt a sense of heroism. After a while, the bandit stockade could be seen with the naked eye. There was still light over there. The head of the entourage laughed when he saw it. Pointing at the fire in the stockade, he said, "Meng Hun is such an idiot. He's trying to lure us away and buy time. He didn't expect that I had a trick up my sleeves. I left some people to guard the food. It's not that easy to get the food. If you want to take it, take your life." Seeing the bandits' stockade getting closer and closer, the head of the entourage felt excited. He smelled blood in the air, which made him even more overjoyed. Obviously, this was the evidence that Meng Hun had led his men to launch a sneak attack. Maybe he was already wounded and had fled. The old hunter suddenly felt extremely uncomfortable when he was only 100 meters away from the stockade, as if a terrible beast was targeting his vital parts. This kind of vigilance had saved him many times in danger, and this time the feeling was stronger than ever. He stopped for a moment and suddenly bent over and rolled over. The old hunter felt that his hands and feet were numb and weak in panic, as if he would lose his life if he slowed down a bit. His action was so sudden that the head of the entourage came back to himself from his extreme excitement and became serious. "What are you doing?" As soon as he finished speaking, a strange sound came from the back of the troop. Screams kept coming from the back. The exhausted soldiers fell one after another like rice being cut one after another. The head of the entourage was frightened by the sudden change. All he could see was darkness. He could not see the enemy at all. It was as if the deadly arrows had come out of nowhere. After only 3 volleys of arrows, only 20 to 30 of his soldiers were left. The rest had been turned into porcupines. TSK. Cowards. The Mengs keep using such useless people. What a disgrace to Lord Meng. Jiang Pingji squatted on a branch. She wanted to shoot some arrows at the head of the entourage, but she did not expect him to be so cruel that he grabbed the corpses and used them as meat shields. A few stray arrows hit the corpses. It was rare to see someone so useless. Qiguan Rang's night vision was not that good. He heard Jiang Pingji's sarcasm and thought she was belittling the enemy. Jiang Pingji patted the trunk of the tree, which made a cracking sound. The troops heard the sound and put their hands to their mouths. They shouted, "Meng Gongyong of the previous dynasty is ridiculous." Qiguan Rang's heart sank. He was frightened by their thunderous voices. The descendants of today are worse than dogs. Someone's feather fan almost fell to the ground. Was it really okay to mock them so blatantly? At that moment, Qiguan Rang could not help but think of the coarse cloth Jiang Pingji left behind. It directly called the Mengs dogs. Jiang Pingji said to Qiguan Rang in distress, "I don't think it sounds imposing. Should I say something more infuriating?" Qiguan Rang was speechless. Wasn't that infuriating? If it were him, his brain would explode. Chapter 231. 232. Spitting Blood. 1. The big streaming room was full of talented people. For the first time, Jiang Pingji felt that the audience in the streaming room was not completely useless. At least they were good at swearing. Qiguan Rang was dumbfounded. He had never thought that the elegant aristocratic son of the aristocratic family would actually swear. Even though he felt good when he heard it, he had never thought that Lu Shi would be such a Langjun. Qiguan Rang felt that he had opened the door to a whole new world. His troops shouted the same sentence in unison. Their voices echoed all over the mountain. The head of the entourage felt a sharp pain in his heart when he heard it. He almost choked on his breath. He looked at the dead bodies lying on the ground. His vision darkened. He staggered and almost fell on his butt. The old hunter crawled out of his hiding place. He did not dare to look back. His clothes were stained with the soldiers' blood. The sticky and warm feeling on his hands scared him out of his wits. His face was as pale as paper. He crawled away on all fours. The reward for leading the way was tempting, but how could it compare to his own life? It would be a waste if he did not have the life to spend the money. He decided that he would never do such a dangerous job again. The head of the entourage was a man who cherished his life. Staying outside was not as safe as staying in the bandit village. At least there were buildings and shelters in the village to protect him from the arrows. However, when he and his subordinates left the dead bodies on the ground and arrived at the brightly lit bandit village, they were all shocked by the bloody scene inside. There were many more dead bodies than outside, and there were several arrows stuck in each of them. Some of the fatal wounds were not from the arrows, but they were still dead. They must have been killed after the battle. The head of the entourage, who had never cared about human lives, was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. He could not say a word. Chief, that looks like, second Langjun. An injured soldier was so scared that his legs were trembling. He pointed at a greenish-black corpse that emitted a strange aura with a trembling finger. What? The head of the entourage suddenly came to his senses. He quickly crawled toward the corpse. The corpse was very cold and hard. It gave off a rotten smell, but the face was still recognizable. At this moment he finally understood why Meng Hun and his gang shouted, "The descendants lost their son and their food." Meng Liang's Langjun had already been killed. Touching the body, he felt like a piece of meat that had been frozen in an ice cellar. His heart sank deeper and deeper. Just by looking at the condition of the body, he could guess that Meng Liang had not been killed in the past few days. It was highly likely that he had already been killed when he was captured by Meng Hun. At this thought, the head of the entourage was so scared that his mind went blank. He felt a stabbing pain in his heart and spat out a mouthful of blood, but he swallowed it back. However, the matter that stimulated his nerves was not over yet. "Leader, there's no more food." The bandits' stronghold was empty and there was no trace of the mountain-like grain bags. The head of the entourage could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His eyelids rolled and he passed out. How could he not vomit blood? How could he not pass out from anger? Meng Liang had been killed a long time ago, but Meng Hun had created the illusion that Meng Liang was still alive and cheated the Mengs of their food. After taking the food, he made up those humiliating words. It was as if he was afraid that people would not know that he had killed Meng Liang and cheated the Mengs of their food. Meng Liang had killed his wife and daughter, so he took revenge. He killed Meng Liang and cheated the Mengs of 3,000 dong of food. The Mengs were proud of that, but he just stood there and watched like a monkey show. He must have secretly mocked the Mengs for being as stupid as pigs. This was really a loss of a son and a loss of food. That was so frustrating. "Do you feel good now?" On the other side, Jiang Pingji was riding high. "How can I not feel good?" Meng Hun was so excited that his hands were shaking. He knelt on the ground and his strong body yielded to her. "From now on, my life belongs to you, Langjun. You've given me a new life. You're like a second parent to me. In this life, I'm only willing to be at your beck and call. Even if you want my life, I'll do it without hesitation." Jiang Pingji stopped smiling and did not help him up. Instead, she said something meaningful. "Remember your vow. Remember your vow today. No matter what happens, I hope your loyalty will not change." Although it was convenient to be a man, Jiang Pingji did not want to keep it a secret. One day she would openly tell the world that Lu Shi was a proper woman, and not a legitimate child of the Lu family. People treated men and women differently. Men might be praised for doing the same thing, but women would be criticized for doing it. Jiang Pingji was very curious. If Meng Hun knew she was a woman, would he still be loyal to her? Meng Hun said firmly, "If I break my vow, I'll be struck by lightning. Get up. It's cold on the ground." Jiang Pingji smiled and helped Meng Hun up. "Because it feels good. But have you thought about what to do after that?" Qiguan Rang, who was watching from the side, poured cold water on Meng Hun. "Since I dared to do this, I've already thought of a way out. I'll only leave some people in the farm and the rest will pretend to be bandits. They'll clean up the bandits and recruit useful bandits to expand the size of the troop." Jiang Pingji said calmly, "There are many bandits in the mountains in Hejian County. Even the government can't do anything about them. With this disguise, it'll be much easier to hide. The Mengs may send troops to retaliate." Qiguan Rang suddenly stopped. All the crimes were on Meng Hun's head. Even if the Mengs wanted to retaliate, they would dig deep to find Meng Hun, not the bandits in Hejian County. Meng Hun was not so kind as to go all the way to Hejian County to suppress bandits and increase the achievements of the Hejian County chief. So be it. No fool would stay in the same place after stirring up trouble. Jiang Pingji said indifferently, "In 2 days, when the situation is less tense, I plan to let Meng Hun leave Hejian County and escape to other places to divert the Meng's attention. We haven't even dealt with the mess in Meng County in Song Prefecture. Where will we find so many troops to avenge our son?" It was already a troubled time. The Mengs still had a lot of problems to deal with. How could they want to find her? She would leave Hejian County in 2 or 3 months. If they could find her, she would admit defeat. "Are we just going to leave the grain?" Qiguan Rang asked. As for the grain, we'll store it in the cellar. I'll send someone to keep an eye on it. The most dangerous place is the safest. Those idiots all think that Meng Hun and his men have moved the grain away. Who would have thought that the grain was only moved from the surface to the underground? Chapter 232. Something bad happened. At dawn, the county chief of Hejian County was woken up by his servants from his bed. The county chief got up from his bed with sleepy eyes. What are you yelling for? You sleep first. I'll go and see what happened. The county chief's beloved concubine was also disturbed. She said in a coquettish tone, Master, it's not even dawn yet. Something must have happened. The county chief of Hejian County was also angry. Anyone who was woken up from a sweet dream would be angry, not to mention the county chief of Hejian County, who had been living like a prince for many years. Gradually he became a little angry in bed. He lifted the quilt, grabbed his clothes with one hand and hurriedly went out. When he heard the servant's report, his remaining sleepiness disappeared instantly. He was so shocked that he almost fell to the ground. What did you say? Say it again. Who did you say died? The Hejian County chief's eyes were wide open like a pair of copper bells. His face was full of shock. He spoke so fast that his tongue could be twisted. What happened last night? Tell me in detail. The Hejian County chief grabbed the servant's collar and pulled him towards himself. The servant was so scared that he was trembling all over. As they were too close, the warm breath from the satrap's mouth hit his face. The servant became more nervous and repeated what he had just said. Master. Something big happened yesterday. It is said that the Langjun of the Mengs in Xianxia was poisoned by someone. The county chief of Hejian County was also stunned. He wished that it was just a nightmare and not the bad news he was hearing. Who is the Langjun of the Mengs in Xianxia? If the Langjun of the Mengs was in trouble in Hejian County, he wouldn't be too worried. However, he had a bad feeling. He was afraid that the Langjun was an important figure in the Mengs. What is his identity? The servant gasped and said with difficulty, it was said that the Langjun of the Mengs was the second son of the Mengs. His name is Meng Liang. The second son of the Mengs. Hearing these three words was like a clap of thunder, directly causing him to be stunned on the spot. His legs went limp and he actually lost his composure and sat on the ground. Boy, are you all right? The servant was already afraid, and seeing the pillar of the family lose his composure, he became even more flustered. Help me up. The Hejian County chief grabbed the servant's arm and stood up. At this moment his mind was completely muddled. He deeply felt that his luck was terrible this year. What kind of Taisui did he offend? If not, why did the noblewoman of Hejian County almost die a few days ago, and now the second son of the Meng family was murdered? Master, what should we do now? The servant still remembered the scene a month ago when the head of the entourage broke into the city gate with his men and killed people. He didn't take the Hejian County chief seriously because he had a strong backer. If the Mengs want to make a fuss about it, I'm afraid. Even though Meng Liang wasn't killed by the Hejian County chief, it was still someone who got into trouble in his territory. It was highly possible that the Meng family would implicate him in a fit of anger. The county chief of Hejian County was pulled back to reality by Meng Qi's words. He pulled himself together and pretended to be calm. What are you afraid of? I'm a righteous man. The disciple of the Meng family came to Hejian County without receiving any news. Can you blame me if something happens to him? Although he said so, the Hejian County chief wasn't confident that he wouldn't be implicated. In a panic, he just wanted to find someone to give him some advice. Suddenly he thought of Lu Shi. He slapped his thigh and said loudly, "Prepare the carriage. We're going to the Lu mansion." The servant nodded and said, "I'm going to prepare it now." But he didn't take 2 steps before he turned back. "Master, please forgive me. I almost forgot something else." The Hejian County chief asked impatiently, "What else is there? Say it in one breath. Don't waste time." The servant answered, "Yesterday the guards at the city gate reported that there was a suspicious grain team." The Hejian County chief asked, "Are you saying that the grain team is the thief who killed Meng Liang?" "No." "An old hunter came to the yamen this morning and got a shocking news. The grain that the grain team was escorting was prepared by the Mengs to exchange for Meng Liang with the thief. But the thief was vicious. He killed Meng Liang early and tricked the Mengs into sending the grain. The old hunter said that there was a bloody battle in the mountains last night. Half of the grain team was killed by the thief. There were only 20 or 30 soldiers left. They are all in the yamen now. The servant told the story without taking a breath. The county chief of Hejian County was stunned. He was shocked by the first news, but he had mixed feelings about the second news. He didn't like the Meng style, but he didn't expect the thief to be so bold. They killed people and cheated them of the grain. The Hejian County chief thought for a while and said, "Go to the yamen first and then to the Lu mansion. Send someone to send the visiting card to the Lu County chief." It seemed like a peaceful day, but there was an undercurrent brewing in the dark that affected the pulse of Dongqing. The common people didn't notice it, but those who were well-informed reacted. The survivors of the grain team were all from the Mengs, so they were tight-lipped. But there was also an old hunter who escaped from death. He didn't have a high level of awareness, so he didn't keep his mouth shut. With a little coercion and a little temptation he would spill everything. Of course, it included the 2 sentences that the troops said to ridicule the Mengs. It was ridiculous that Meng Gongyong of the previous dynasty said that his descendants were worse than dogs. And the second sentence, which was even more infuriating, said that Meng Gongyong killed the enemy and brought peace to the world, but his descendants lost their children and grain. Even a blind man could tell that the culprit who kidnapped and murdered Meng Liang was trying to humiliate the Mengs. Because of the fear of the Mengs, people didn't dare to say it out loud. But they despised the thief in their hearts. They were one of the 4 noble families of Dongqing, but now they were being ridiculed by the thief. Thinking about how brave Meng Gongyong was in the past, it was sad that his descendants had come to this. For a while, the 2 sentences spread among the people as if they had wings. No matter what era the people were in, they were always interested in gossip. Their love for fun had never changed. Before the Hejian County chief came to visit, Lu Shi had heard several versions of the story. He was speechless. He knew who did it and he was mentally prepared. But when he heard the news he was still touched. "Give me some advice. If even you can't do anything, the arrogant Mengs won't let me go." The Hejian County chief was so anxious that his mouth was bubbling. Lu Shi smiled and shook his head. He elegantly poured a cup of tea for the Hejian County chief and said slowly, Chapter 233. The Hejian County chief thought it made sense. 2. But he was only a county chief in name only. How could he have so many soldiers to catch the bandits? Just taking care of the guards in the county governor manor who were just there to keep up appearances was already a stretch for him. He sighed and said shamefully, "Brother Lu, you don't know. Even though I have the title of a county chief, I can't be compared to you." Without any real power in their hands, they had neither food nor manpower. How could they eliminate the bandits around them? How can I let the people live and work in peace? I have the heart, but I can't do anything to those bandits. If there were people with food, why would they let the bandits grow and disturb the people? He also had great ambitions. He wanted to be a good county chief and work for the people. However, there were too many powerful Buddhas in Hejian County. As a powerless county chief, he could only be an obedient mute and retire peacefully. In the past he had tried to gather people to suppress the bandits, but at that time, the bandits had already become very powerful and could not be mobilized. Lu Shi sighed helplessly. He seemed to sympathize with his old classmate. After a while, Lu Shi hesitated and said, "You and I have known each other for a long time and we are classmates. I can't just watch you being attacked by the Mengs and ignore it. The only way out is to catch the bandits who killed Meng Langjun. If you lack manpower, why don't you borrow some people from other families in the name of suppressing the bandits for the people? It's fine if no one gives you some food." The county chief of Hejian County looked embarrassed. This solution could solve the urgent situation, but he would lose face. The families that Lu Shi mentioned were the other gentry families in Hejian County. The county chief felt like he was begging for money. Seeing the county chief hesitate, Lu Shi said righteously, "My family doesn't have many resources. Even though we have some property, we are only the second branch. We can't take over the family, so there's a limit to what we can do. If you don't mind, I'm willing to give you 100 servants to help you suppress the bandits." The gentry families were big and had many servants. But the number of servants to guard the house was fixed, and the number was fixed. After all, it didn't take too many people to look after the house. If there were too many, it would be equivalent to raising another mouth to eat without doing anything. Under normal circumstances, if the Hejian county chief went out to borrow people from other families, he wouldn't be able to borrow many. Of course, the wealthy families that secretly raised private armies were an exception. 100 people was a huge number and a generous one. How could the Hejian county chief not be shocked? Even the previous few times when they were suppressing the bandits, they only mobilized 100 or 200 soldiers. The county chief of Hejian County calmed down and relaxed his frown. If it weren't for the inappropriate situation, he would have laughed out loud. Brother, you've really helped me a lot. Regardless of whether we can catch those thieves or not, I will owe you a big favor. Lushi also broke into a smile and said a few words humbly. He looked like he was doing it for the sake of brotherhood. The Hejian County chief naturally had to return the favor after receiving such a big favor. The 100 people were like 100 mouths. The Lus had already sent people, they couldn't ask them to give back food. Therefore he decided to pay a visit to the other landowning households later and ask them if they could give him some food or not. After all, to these landowning households, people were more valuable than food. Anything that could be solved with food was nothing. Training servants required energy, money, and material resources. If the people they lent out were lost, they would suffer a great loss. In comparison, it was more cost-effective to send people off with a batch of food. With Lu Shi taking the lead, the other families couldn't be too stingy. They would more or less give some food. Although it was a bit embarrassing, it was worth it if they could get through this crisis. The Hejian County chief felt better when he thought about it. After Jiang Pingji finished dealing with the follow-up matters, she received a message from the gatekeeper asking her to see Lu Shi. Father, what can I do for you? Jiang Pingji was a bit confused. Lu Shi wouldn't scold her because of what happened last night, would he? Father has found a few free suckers for you. Jiang Pingji was confused. What suckers? Lu Shi smiled and took a sip of tea. He told her about the visit from the Hejian County chief. You should have 100 people in your troops, right? If you are willing, you can lend them to the Hejian County chief. He will be in charge of the troops, but you can make all the decisions secretly. You can divide the spoils of war. As for the captured bandits, I will talk to him and give him a clear path. Jiang Pingji had secretly suppressed the bandits and recruited usable bandits into the troops. It was a good idea, but it was not a good way to explain if they were discovered. Lu Shi wanted to use this opportunity to give her a clear path and get a call from the Hejian County chief. Of course, the 100 people belonged to his daughter, so it was not appropriate for Lu Shi to make the decision for her. If Jiang Pingji was not willing, Lu Shi planned to send 100 people from his guards to the Hejian County chief. Jiang Pingji listened and thought about it carefully. He was a bit tempted. Giving her a clear path was only one of the benefits. The other was that during the suppression of the bandits, all the expenses of the troops would be paid by the public account. What did it mean by paying the public account? The chief of Hejian County collected food from various aristocratic families and used it all to feed Jiang Pingji's troops. Jiang Pingji didn't have to spend a single cent. Although some of the spoils of war would be taken by the chief of Hejian County, she had more choices about the captured bandits and even other benefits. In layman's terms, it was using other people's money to feed one's own troops. There were many gentry families in Hejian, so they had more money and food. No matter how stingy those people were, they would pay a little for the sake of their reputation. The total amount of food was very considerable. Jiang Pingji felt that they could eat some of it and carry some of it away. Of course, after all, the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages. The bandits near Hejian must be eliminated. In the past, we could only do it secretly. Now we have a good reason to do it, and there will be people who will pay for the expenses. Wouldn't it be unfair to myself if I don't accept such a good offer? It was not easy to start from scratch. One would not know the cost of food if one did not manage the household. The scale of the troops was still small. When the number of people reached thousands or even tens of thousands, she would not be able to feed so many people with her current wealth. Therefore, it was very important to increase income and reduce expenditure. Lu Shi's move helped her solve a problem and saved her a lot of expenses. He pressed his lips together as if he wanted to suppress the smile on his face, but the gentle smile in his eyes betrayed his true feelings. Since you have agreed, I will inform the Hejian County chief tomorrow. Lu Shi paused and then asked in a low voice, have you cleaned up the aftermath of the incident with Meng Liang? Father, don't worry. It has been done, Jiang Pingji answered with certainty. The father and son looked at each other and smiled. They both saw the slyness in each other's eyes. At that moment the news of Meng Liang, the second son of the Mengs, being murdered spread like wildfire. Chapter 234. 235. Spitting Blood 4. The Hejian County chief put aside his pride and collected more than 1,000 dawn of food and various weapons. As he had expected, no one except Lu Shi was willing to give them to others. They chose to pay with money. He thought that Lu Shi's men were the elites he had raised in Hu County, so he was very confident about killing the bandits. He organized the money into a booklet and handed it to Lu Shi with both hands. He also told Lu Shi that he was not good at dispatching and hoped that Lu Shi would pay more attention to him. After all, they were Lu Shi's soldiers. Although Lu Shi said that he would lend them to him, it was not appropriate for the Hejian County chief to interfere. Of course, Lu Shi wouldn't refuse the supplies that were delivered to his doorstep. He politely declined them and accepted them under the urging of the Hejian County chief. With a turn of his head, he handed them over to his daughter. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She had only lied to them and a lot of food and money had been delivered to her. She finally understood why the Lus were so rich. Lu Shi did not see through her thoughts. She hinted, the Hejian County chief can't eat or sleep well. He is eager to see the bandits killed. Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. She understood the meaning of his words and nodded in response. Father, don't worry. I know what to do. They had to kill the bandits, but she had the final say on who to kill. She just needed to show a good record. The Hejian County chief would probably be grateful and think that Lu Shi was a good friend and that Lu Shi was a hero. Anyway, the father and son would take all the material and reputation benefits. Others would be happy even if they suffered a loss. Lu Shi was worried. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. The tallest tree on the shore will be destroyed by the current. People are stupid. Those who are outstanding are easy to be envied and criticized. As your father, I don't want you to suffer such grievances. Therefore, when necessary, Lanting can keep a low profile and avoid the limelight of others' fights. You should focus on the result. There is no need to fight for a temporary victory. Others did not know about her future, but Lu Shi knew her ambition and talent. He saw with his own eyes that the child could still be free and unfettered after hurting the Mengs. If it were someone else, would they be able to do that? She had already built a foundation by developing steadily. Her future development would be smoother. Once she was fully fledged, all she needed was a fortuitous encounter, and she would be able to rise to the top in an instant, shocking the people of the world and shaking the entire court. Father, don't worry. I'm not a brainless brute. Jiang Pingji answered with a smile. Lu Shi nodded his head in satisfaction, but then realized that there was something wrong with his words. She was his daughter. While Jiang Pingji was preparing to exterminate the bandits and catch the murderer, who killed the Langjun of the Mengs, the head of the entourage of the Mengs was escorting Meng Liang's coffin back to Meng County in Song Prefecture. She wore a white silk mourning dress, a white banner hung high, paper money fluttered in the wind, and the soul guiding bell rang all the way. Meng Liang had been dead for quite some time. In order to prevent maggots from rotting and to preserve his body in perfect condition, they had specially made a special coffin and placed a large amount of ice inside. They were rushing to send Meng Liang's body back to his homeland before the beginning of summer. However, it was difficult to speed up while carrying a coffin. It should have taken them only half a month to travel at top speed, but it took them a month and a half. They had lost count of how many times they had waited for a month and a half. By then, Jiang Pingji had expanded the number of troops to 1,000 after exterminating the bandits. That was the result of her being picky. If she had slightly loosened the selection criteria, she would have had about 2,000 troops. In a month and a half, they had conquered more than 20 bandits' villages and secretly used them as strongholds. They had looted countless spoils of war. She had handed over all her antiques, calligraphy, and paintings. She had kept all her food, cotton, and money. The Hejian County chief was well aware of her actions, but he did not say anything. In that era, knowledge was priceless. The value of calligraphy, paintings, and antiques far exceeded the value of food. However, that rule did not apply to Jiang Pingji. She knew that only by strengthening herself would she be able to survive in this chaotic world. Antiques, calligraphy and paintings would all be hers in the future. Therefore she handed over those things that looked expensive but were just old rolls of paper in her eyes without hesitation. She did not care, but the Hejian county chief felt that she was too honest and upright. She had suffered a great loss without saying a word. She had benefited from it. He was especially merciful to the captured bandits. It was up to the Lus to decide how to deal with them. The only regret was that they had not caught the bandit who killed Meng Liang Meng Hun. But the Hejian county chief felt comfortable when he thought that the hidden dangers around Hejian county were decreasing day by day. He was also secretly envious of Lu Shi. Looking at the elite troops of Lu Shi and his own troops, the gap was too big. The former was serious about exterminating bandits. Blood flowed like a river at every turn. The latter was chased by bandits and could only let them grow. As the size of the troops increased, Meng Hun temporarily hid behind the scenes. Suku had to shoulder the double workload. Suku was so busy every day that he had no time to rest. If Qiguan Rang did not occasionally come to help him, he would have been exhausted. When he finally had some free time, he turned around and found that his Longjuan's troop had already expanded to 1,000 people. 1,000 private troops was nothing in front of any noble family. But considering the time it took for the troops to be established and the current situation, it could only be described as incredible. Even though Suku had seen the development of the troops with his own eyes, he was still a little stunned. Rang Xiaoyu has been busier lately. Qiguan Rang and Wei Yuan's daughter's wedding date was set in 8 months. Although it was a long time, they still had to go through a complicated ceremony. 8 months was considered a rush. If Wei Yuan was not in a hurry to get his daughter married, it could have been delayed for more than a year. Qiguan Rang was now the future groom. He was in high spirits and the haze between his eyebrows was swept away. It's not as leisurely as Wenjing, Suku said lightly. He and Qiguan Rang had been interacting more and more and they had many common topics. Eventually they became friends. You and Master Gongchao have already decided to choose Lang Jun. Why haven't you expressed your opinion yet? Jiang Pingji's secret forces were developing rapidly, but there was no hidden danger of an unstable foundation. Instead it was very solid. This was inseparable from Suku's hard work. However, one person's ability was limited. He only had so much energy. When there were only 100 people in the troops, he was in charge of the internal affairs and Meng Hun was in charge of the external affairs. They could manage the troops in an orderly manner. Now Meng Hun could not show his face in public because of the sensitive timing. A lot of work was piled on him. Plus, the troops had expanded 10 times, so naturally his work had increased by more than 10 times. There was no salary increase and he had no colleagues to share his work with. Chapter 235. Suku was a smart man. He could tell that Qiguan Rang liked his Langjun. If that was the case, why didn't he join them? If he joined them now, he could immediately push all the internal affairs to Qiguan Rang. He would be completely free. Suku worked overtime every day and he had dark circles under his eyes. He was a young man who looked tired all day. Those who didn't know him would think that he was having sex every night. It's not the right time. Qiguan Rang forced a smile, but he wasn't good at that kind of expression. The curve of his mouth was stiff. Time? Suku asked, isn't this the right time? How could adding flowers to a brocade be compared to providing timely help? How could the insignificant friendship with Langjun be compared to when she had a firm foothold in the future? Qiguan Rang glanced at Suku and said, Dongqing still exists and the royal family still has some power. It's not the right time yet. Suku was silent for a while. He vaguely understood what Qiguan Rang was implying. As long as Dongqing still existed, Jiang Pingji couldn't develop her business freely. The shop was small and Suku could manage it all by himself. There was no point for Qiguan Rang to join them now. Other than sharing Suku's workload and helping him get off work on time every day. He would wait for the time when Jiang Pingji really needed him. If it was someone else, he would have been furious if he showed the intention to assist Jiang Pingji but refused to join them. What made Qiguan Rang gratified was that Jiang Pingji could completely understand and support his modesty. It was a tacit understanding between him and Jiang Pingji. They were both teachers and friends and they got along well. Because of that, Qiguanrang would occasionally come over to help Suku with some of his work. Suku's face turned pale. He said gloomily, I can only hope that the time comes soon. Otherwise, according to his Longjun's development, he would definitely die of exhaustion. His Langjun was too good at delegating work. Laymen don't care about professionals. Qiguanrang stopped him from saying anything. Qiguanrang looked at Suku and teased, Xiaoyu, you're at the age to get married. Why don't you take some time to think about it? No matter how unreasonable Lu Langjun is, he can't possibly ignore his subordinate's marriage, right? Seeing that the young man was dating, getting married and having a baby, she should at least give him a few days off. Qiguanrang did not want to join the team at this time because he saw the heavy workload and wanted to relax for a few more days. After hearing this, Suku's face turned red and pale. He seemed to be in a dilemma. When Zheng's suggestion is really, could he say that Qiguanrang was very similar to his Langjun in some aspects? If Jiang Pingji knew how busy Suku was, she would probably say the same thing. Suddenly, Suku changed his mind. He hoped that the time for Qiguanrang to join them would come later. He could not imagine what would happen if his Langjun and Qiguanrang got together. He would be the one who would be exhausted. Qiguanrang pursed his lips and said, Xiaoyu, you don't have to be so depressed. Once Lu Longjuan's name spreads, there will naturally be talents coming to visit. Suku still had a hopeless expression on his face. Wait until then. He guessed that he had already died of exhaustion at his post. Although Jiang Pingji was a hands-off boss, it did not mean that she did not care about anything. Sans Hisong Xuningsher, the streamer has been going shopping for the past 2 days. I feel a little bored. Wuxia is Hao Liao Qiao. #propping chin. The streamer is not a 10,000-year-old primary school student. There will be incidents wherever she goes. Recently, the streamer has been watching all kinds of bandit suppression series. It was exciting at first, but it got boring after a while. Now shopping and drinking are like watching a gourmet show. A month and a half had passed and the streaming room's upper limit was still 10,000 people. Jiang Pingji streamed every day. With the flow of people in the streaming room and all kinds of gifts, she had accumulated 986,000 points of popularity. In a few days she would break through the million mark. The system looked at the popularity points enviously. It tried to persuade Jiang Pingji to use them to increase the level of the streaming room, but she had heartlessly rejected it. In the end, the system was so angry that it could not do anything to her. Tudu Feichio, I think it's okay. Anyway, I think the streamer streaming is good. Also, think about the pile of work on Suku's desk. If the streamer streamed how to deal with them, I think it would be even more boring. When the bullet screen was sent, the audience in the streaming room was silent for a second. Then they all laughed because they felt sorry for Suku. Sherry de Li, Suku is really unlucky to have a Zhou Boppy like the streamer. Kojiao Chi fan. If I had a boss like her, I would strongly request 5 insurances, 1 housing fund and most importantly, a raise in salary. Jiang Pingji sat at a noodle stall by the street eating bland noodles. Her eyes were secretly looking at the screen, but her ears were listening to the conversation of the customers. She was multitasking. She added a bullet screen from the streamer. Streamer V, I just passed by the cloth shop. Didn't I ask Taxi to pick some new cloth for him and his aunt? Jiang Pingji thought about it carefully. It seemed that Suku's current living standard was not bad and he did not have any other needs. She asked the servants to prepare some cloth, rice and silver for him and sent them all to his aunt. Is that a raise in salary? Yinuagia Zhuga Qinmal. That makes sense. Suku is speechless. But you forgot the most important thing, the vacation. It was good to give him a raise, but he did not have time to enjoy the money he earned. He was so tired all day. Suku still deserved to be distressed. Jiang Pingji coughed in her heart. Streamer V. As the saying goes, capable people do more work. Now we are short of manpower. Write down the vacation for him first and put it together later. She said it nicely, but not only Suku, but even the audience in the streaming room did not believe her. Their Longjuan's daily activities were either suppressing bandits or eating and drinking. As her subordinate, how could Suku not feel bad? Regarding this, Jiang Pingji expressed that she was wronged. Suppressing bandits and making trouble was true, but she did not admit to eating and drinking. Every day she went out shopping with a proper purpose. After finishing the noodles, Jiang Pingji took out 3 copper coins to pay. The other customers also left. Back at the mansion, Jiang Pingji went to the study and took out the property account book that Suku had made. All kinds of items were carefully categorized and looked very clear. She put down the book and took the bamboo paper from the corner of the desk. There were all kinds of data listed on it. Cultivation, I haven't been here for a few days. What are you reading? Chapter 236. 237. Vomiting blood. 6. Let you see a baby. Musician Zhuge Qinmo, I don't even need to help you to the toilet. The streamer's handwriting is elegant and flamboyant, but to put it bluntly, what the hell is she writing? How can you understand it? You live up to your ID. Jiang Pingji's handwriting was just like her personality. She did whatever she wanted. In the past she would follow Lu Shi's handwriting and write in an orderly manner. But ever since she used charcoal to write and draw on coarse cloth, she seemed to have opened a door to a whole new world. Her handwriting became wilder and wilder. She completely let go of herself, and her handwriting was even more sloppy than wild cursive. Musician Zhuge Qinmo, you're flattering me. Cultivation, if this is really the record for the grain price, does it mean that the streamer's plan is about to begin? In the streaming room, even though the content was boring, the passion of the viewers did not diminish. As the streaming room gained fame, more and more people believed in it. The viewers found it harder to watch the stream. Every seat was hard to get. Even if you had been single for 30 years and had a 100 megabit internet speed, you might not be able to get one. What was worse was that the streaming room could not be broadcasted. If the viewers wanted to watch the stream, they would have to wait for the video to be broadcasted on Baidu the next day. Cultivation could be considered a veteran in the streaming room. He kept up with the updates. He recorded everything that happened around the streamer during the stream and even compiled a booklet for it. As soon as he heard that the grain price had skyrocketed, he immediately thought of Jiang Pingji's plan to suppress the grain price. It was as if he had been injected with chicken blood. Jiang Pingji shook her head. It's not the right time. She had been walking the streets and alleys. She had visited the tea houses, eateries, and taverns. She had heard the people talking about the recent gossip. More and more of it was related to the civil unrest in Song Prefecture and Meng County. But their news had not been confirmed, so the spread was limited. Otherwise, why would the grain price have only doubled? Jiang Pingji murmured, it's too early to make a move. The rumors are still brewing. There's still some time before they really explode. When the time comes, the people will panic and rush to the grain stores to buy grain. The grain price will not be the same as it is today. Some of the people would believe the baseless rumors, but the doubling of the grain price would make them hesitate. If Jiang Pingji started her plan now, her family's grain store would be emptied by another force. When the food shortage started, most of the people would have to grit their teeth and buy the food that had skyrocketed in price. So she was not in a hurry. When the government of Hejian County confirmed the news of the civil unrest in Zhangzhou, the people would panic and find that they could no longer afford to buy food. That would be the time for Jiang Pingji to strike. She took a look at Suku's statistical report and found that they had achieved great results in suppressing the bandits in the past month. The money collected was exchanged for food, which was purchased from the nearby Zisong County at regular prices. It added up to about 1,500 dong. The 3,000 dong she had extorted from the Mengs and the 1,300 dong the Hejian County chief had collected from various aristocratic families. After deducting the food consumed during this period of time, she still had 5,500 dong left, which was much more than she had expected. Takshu, go and tell the butler to call the shopkeeper of the grain store over here. The second branch of the Lus owned all kinds of stores. Half of them were Gu Min's dowry, and the other half were bought by Lu Shi over the years. The Lus had 3 grain stores in Hejian. They were located in different areas and had different customers. Daily necessities such as rice, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea did not make a lot of money, but every person needed them and the demand was huge. Therefore, the profits of those stores were moderate every year. As long as the shopkeepers followed the rules, it would be difficult for them to make a loss. The 3 shopkeepers were a little scared when they were suddenly summoned by their master. They were afraid that they had done something wrong and would be fired. Don't be so nervous. I called you here to ask you some questions. Jiang Pingji sat at the head of the table and asked one of them in a cold voice, "How's the business these days?" The shopkeeper answered respectfully, "The business is okay. The people are worried about the civil unrest in Zhangzhou, so the grain is selling smoothly." "Is there anything else?" The shopkeeper was startled. He thought carefully and said, "Apart from some scattered purchases, there are many big businesses." The so-called big businesses were actually other grain stores planning to buy in bulk from them. But the shopkeepers were not stupid. They knew that the price of grain was rising fast, so they could wait for a while and sell slowly after the price rose to another level. Anyway, no matter where the grain was, they would not lose money. The only difference was whether they could make more or less. "You sold the grain?" Jiang Pingji asked. In order to have a continuous supply, the grain stores would more or less have some grain in storage. The shopkeeper hurriedly said, "I wouldn't dare to do that. Of course, I have to ask my master before I make a decision." Jiang Pingji nodded with satisfaction and said, "Just follow the price of grain these days. If the people want to buy in bulk, you can sell it as usual. If someone wants to buy in bulk, you don't have to ask for permission. Just say yes." The three shopkeepers hesitated. In their opinion, it was a good opportunity to make money. They should limit the sale and wait for the grain price to rise before selling. It would definitely be more profitable than selling it now. Jiang Pingji did not intend to explain. She only said coldly, "Just do as I say. I will have other instructions when the time comes." All merchants were unscrupulous. Merchants were born with the instinct to pursue profits. No matter what era it was, this had never changed. But for Jiang Pingji, the main purpose of the plan was not to make money but to gain fame. Or rather, she wanted to earn both money and fame. To others, it seemed impossible, but the opportunity was right in front of her. She had to seize it. The three shopkeepers looked at each other. But Jiang Pingji was their master. Lu Shi had never cared about the family affairs. Madame Hu had always allowed Jiang Pingji to do whatever she wanted, and the second lady had no reason to support her. The shopkeepers had no choice but to listen to her. "Yes." The three of them replied in unison. "You may leave now. Remember to report back if anything happens." When Hejian County was in turmoil due to the civil unrest in Song Prefecture, the Meng's entourage finally arrived at Meng County in Song Prefecture before the weather got hotter. Meng County was a wasteland. The streets were empty and there was not a soul to be seen. The sun hung high in the sky and everyone felt a chill. The white banners fluttered in the wind, making a rustling sound. It made the scene even more desolate. Even though the Meng County chief's mansion had been burned down by Meng Hun, Meng Zhan still had a luxurious mansion. Chapter 237. 238 Spitting Blood 7. Who are you? The soldier saw the coffin on the carriage from far away. Seeing that they still wanted to get closer, he took out his knife and stopped them. "This is the Meng's territory. You lowly people leave now. Don't you dare dirty the eyes and ears of the nobles." The head of the entourage rolled down from the carriage in a sorry state. His face was covered with tears. His head and waist were wrapped in white cloth, and his body was draped in linen clothes. His face was unkempt and his eyes were bloodshot. His eye bags were heavy and his face was covered in a layer of dirty oil. He looked extremely unkempt. I have something urgent to report to the Lord. Second Langjun is back," he cried as he spoke. He knelt on the ground and took out his token with trembling fingers. The words carved on it could prove his identity. The soldier didn't know how to read, but he recognized the token. His attitude suddenly changed. "What? Second Langjun is back?" The soldier's expression changed. He was about to flatter Meng Liang to leave a good impression when he saw the coffin on the carriage. All of a sudden, an ominous feeling spread from his back to the back of his head. He felt numb all over. Could it be? Could it be that the person in the coffin was Second Langjun Meng Liang? This conjecture shocked the soldier. "Hurry up and report to the Lord. Second Langjun's body is back. Hurry up." The head of the entourage didn't dare to face Meng Zhan's anger. He roared at the soldier. The soldier was also shocked by the series of events. In a daze, he staggered and ran towards the Meng residence. For a moment, he did not expect the fury of the informant. Meng Zhan was having tea and wine with his friend in the waterside pavilion. They sat opposite each other talking about the world and laughing. But the atmosphere didn't last long. The servant made a lot of noise. His rude behavior made Meng Zhan very angry. The Mengs were one of the 4 noble families in Dongqing. They were very strict. Even the lowest servant had the best manners. No one could find fault with them. It was like when he was entertaining a guest. Even if his friend didn't care, Meng Zhan still felt embarrassed when something so embarrassing happened. Perhaps something happened. Why don't you ask County Chief Meng? The friend smiled warmly and his eyes were calm like the clouds in the sky, causing others to feel a sense of closeness and peace. Meng Zhan held back his anger. He cupped his hands in front of his chest and said, "I didn't teach my servant well. Please forgive me." After saying that, he turned his head and his face darkened. He got up and walked towards the rash servant. Meng Zhan looked impatient. "Tell me what happened." The servant shivered and tried to lower his body to the ground, trying to minimize his presence. Only then did Meng Zhan realize that there was an unfamiliar soldier beside the servant. Judging by his attire, he should be a guard of the Mengs. All of a sudden Meng Zhan's anger grew. This was the place where he entertained his distinguished guests. A guard guarding the gate of the courtyard dared to break in. If this was seen by others, how could he not laugh at the Meng family for not being strict enough to control a mere servant? However, before he could get angry, the soldier had already finished speaking while trembling. "Master, Second Longjuan's body has been brought back." Meng Zhan's mind went blank after he heard it. It was as if thunder exploded in his ears and took away his hearing. After a long time, Meng Zhan regained his senses and grabbed the soldier's collar. His rough movement also startled the guests in the waterside pavilion. "What did you say? Whose body has been brought back?" Meng Zhan's eyes were wide open. His crazy look was a sharp contrast to his usual gentle and elegant appearance. The soldier became more and more nervous, but he still answered subconsciously, "Second Longjuan's body has been brought back." "Second Langjun?" Meng Zhan was so scared that he took a step back. His body hit the pillar of the waterside pavilion. It was as if all his strength had been sucked out. The group of servants were so scared that they knelt on the ground and didn't dare to raise their heads. His friend who was staying in the waterside pavilion heard the commotion and was confused. He was about to stand up, but he saw Meng Zhan holding his chest with his right hand and spitting out a mouthful of blood. His eyes rolled back and he fell into the pond. Witnessing all of this, the friend's expression was slightly startled and he stopped in his tracks. What happened?" Meng Zhan spat out blood and fell into the pond. Everyone was so shocked that they forgot to go into the water to save him. In the end, his friend came back to his senses and asked someone to jump into the water to save Meng Zhan, who was in a coma. Meng Zhan woke up from his coma in a daze. He saw the familiar scenery and his friend next to his bed. He was shocked at first, but then he remembered the news he heard before he passed out. He quickly lifted the quilt. "County Chief Meng, the doctor just came to check on you. You're in shock. You need to rest." Meng Zhan suddenly burst out a strong force. He raised his hand and pushed his friend away. His eyes were full of hatred. "Bring him here." Meng Zhan was so angry that he almost bit his tongue. "Who killed Meng Zhan?" "Mei Zhan." His friend stood up awkwardly. He was shocked when he heard the name. Wasn't that the name of the second Langjun of the Mengs? What happened? Seeing Meng Zhan leave in anger, the friend's shocked expression returned to normal. He even tidied up his hair and clothes. He thought to himself, did something really happen to the second Langjun of the Mengs? Thinking about the young friend he met before he came to Meng County, the man raised his eyebrows and his eyes flashed with a hint of playfulness. "Don't tell me, you've already predicted this?" He followed Meng Zhan and followed him to the hall where Meng Liang's coffin was placed. The servants had put on plain linen clothes, and the decorations in the room had been changed as well. White banners were fluttering and candles were burning. It looked like a mourning hall with a giant coffin in the middle. As soon as he walked in, a strong rancid smell lingered in his nose. Meng Zhan lost his composure and pushed open the lid of the coffin. The body inside was already rotten and covered with maggots. Meng Liang had been dead for almost 3 months and the weather was getting hotter and hotter. There was no place to replenish the ice along the way, so the body could not be preserved. It was normal for maggots to grow. However, the more it was like this, the greater the blow to Meng Zhan. Even though he didn't believe that the person in the coffin was his son, he could still see the outline of Meng Liang from the maggot-covered face. This was his son. Seeing this, Meng Zhan's throat hurt again. Blood spilled out from the corner of his mouth. This scene caused everyone to be shocked again and again. The friend secretly raised his eyebrows. As he was about to leave, there was a fragrant wind. He saw a lady in luxurious clothes lying on the coffin crying. She looked like a pear blossom in the rain. It was a pitiful sight. However, with such thick makeup on her face, it was impressive that she didn't make a mess of her face when she cried. The friend thought to himself. He then heard the lady call the second Langjun in the coffin as her son. Wait, wasn't Meng Liang's mother the second wife of the county chief of Hu County, Lu Shi? The friend's eyes widened. Chapter 238. 239, Spitting Blood 8. His friend stopped looking at him and comforted him gently. County Chief Meng, I'm sorry for your loss. Don't be too sad. However, the pain of losing a son in his middle age was not something that could be soothed by a few words of comfort. Meng Zhan held the edge of the coffin with both of his hands. His fingers were visibly shaking. Because he was using too much strength, the tips of his fingers had turned white. Seeing his veins bulging and his face dark, his friend didn't say anything else. He just sighed and stepped aside. Obviously, Meng Zhan didn't need someone else to comfort him. He needed a quiet place where he could calm down and recover from the sudden shock. However, Meng Zhan didn't want to be alone. He just wanted to figure out why Meng Liang died. His son was fine. Even though he had some small problems and made some mistakes, so what? The Mengs had been a prominent family since the founding of the previous dynasty. They had a huge business and they could handle anything for Meng Liang. If he had known this would happen when he sent him to Shangjing, he would have shouldered all the pressure and protected him under his wings. Now he was on the road to hell at such a young age. As an old father, he had to watch his son die before him. Meng Zhan was a man after all. He was stronger than his crying concubine. After spitting blood a few times, he managed to regain some of his sanity. Bring him here. I want to ask. Just who is so daring that he actually dared to be so ruthless towards little Ro? Meng Zhan's eyes turned red and blue veins popped up on his forehead. He didn't look like the gentle man he used to be. He looked like he had aged 20 years. His friends didn't know whether to leave or stay. They could only put on a serious face and lower their own sense of existence. Not long after, the head of the entourage knelt down in front of Meng Liang's coffin. His stubbled face was covered with tears. The one who killed second Langjun was the thief Meng Hun. He lied to the master. The head of the entourage was anxious. Fear was lingering in his brain. He thought Meng Zhan would stand up and cut his head off in the next second. Meng Zhan smiled coldly. He looked vicious and ferocious. Tell me everything. Meng Hun, His friend frowned. It was the first time he had seen Meng Zhan's expression other than a warm smile. Meng Zhan's whole body was filled with hostility, which made people uncomfortable. But considering that Meng Zhan had just lost his beloved son, it was not too much. The head of the entourage secretly clenched his fists. Whether he could keep his life or not depended on this. After gathering his emotions, the head of the entourage told the story that he had been preparing for over a month. He tried to focus on Meng Hun's treachery and exaggerate the scene when he found the body. He portrayed himself as a loyal man, but the enemy was too cunning. He had no choice but to take back Meng Liang's body. Master, you must help second Langjun. The head of the entourage was crying on the ground. Tears and mucus were running down his face. Normally, Meng Zhan would have kicked him in the chest. But this time it was a good chance for him to save his life. When I got second Langjun's body back, I found out that second Langjun, he was bled to death. The head of the entourage was lying on the ground. Meng Zhan felt another sharp pain in his chest. His right hand clutched the clothes on the left side of his chest. He clenched his teeth and his lips turned blue. Seeing that he was about to pass out again, Meng Zhan pulled himself together with his extraordinary willpower. His eyes were extremely cold. Second Langjun was bled to death by Meng Hun? These words were squeezed out through gritted teeth. No wonder Shang Er's body was purple. Even though part of it was rotten, the body was still weirder than a normal person's. Yes. The head of the entourage nodded with difficulty. Tears streamed down his face. I failed to protect Second Langjun. Master, please allow me to avenge him. When I get my revenge, I will kill myself. I will protect Second Langjun in the afterlife. Meng Zhan's chest was rising and falling rapidly. His beloved concubine had already held him and helped him breathe. After a long time, so long that the head of the entourage thought he was going to die, Meng Zhan's cold and arrogant voice came into his ears. Forget it. If Xianxia knew you were so loyal, he would be happy. Meng Zhan said it unwillingly. He glanced at his friend and said stiffly, I must avenge Xianxia. I am the son of the Mengs. The name of the Mengs in Zhangzhou is not something a traitor can humiliate. If I don't kill him, I am not a man. At that moment, the head of the entourage seemed to remember something. He thought Meng Zhan's hatred could burn even more. After all, he was Meng Zhan's subordinate. The head of the entourage knew Meng Zhan's character very well. The reason why he could stay calm and spare Meng Zhan's death sentence was because he was worried that there were other people around. He couldn't reveal his true nature. If his friend left after paying his condolences, Meng Zhan would be doomed. So the head of the entourage played a trick. With a sorrowful expression, he took out a coarse blue cloth from his bosom and untied it. Meng Zhan took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He asked, What is this? The head of the entourage answered, This is the evidence that the traitor humiliated the Mengs and fooled us. Meng Zhan grabbed it and read every roll of coarse cloth carefully. The more he read, the more his hands trembled. In the end, he unfolded the largest piece of coarse cloth. The calligraphy on it was written in blood. It had already solidified and darkened. It emitted a pungent smell. Meng Zhan's beloved concubine wanted to go closer to read it, but she was choked by the smell. Those who break their promises are the dogs of the Mengs. Meng Zhan's face turned green as he read the beginning. It was as if someone had slapped him 100 times. The Mengs want to use me as a scapegoat to humiliate my wife and daughter. They will be humiliated even after they die. Meng Zhan's heart sank. He couldn't believe that Meng Hun, who was only a martial artist, could see through his real intention. His hands were still shaking as he unfolded the coarse cloth. He hurried to continue reading. If you want to do this to me, don't blame me for being ruthless. If Meng Zhan doesn't die, how can I face the consequences? Meng Zhan's heart ached. The blue veins on his forehead bulged. His head hurt so much that the world seemed to be shaking. Puff. He spat out another mouthful of blood. Meng Zhan's face was pale and he fell to the ground. The coarse cloth fell to the ground. In just one day he had spat out blood several times. His life was short because of the damage to his foundation. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.